How's that?
Okay, I think we're waiting for Carmen and Kenzie. Linda,
Oh, so.
Cynthia, here she is. Awesome. Everybody's getting here. Welcome, welcome back. Hey.
Hello.
So welcome back. Welcome back to day 2 of the end of life preparation, literacy, paperwork, contemplation. I want to start with a quote. Nance, would you please read this quote from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross?
All righty, everyone hear me, I hope. Real love doesn't die. It's the physical body that dies. Genuine, authentic love has no expectations whatsoever. It doesn't even need the physical presence of a person. Even when they are dead and married, that part of you that loves the person will always live. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross.
We have her to thank for the 5 stages of grief, and a lot of sort of transforming our thinking about end of life. Big shout out to her. And I want to check in. This was a suggested homework as we worked on Wish 1 and Wish 2 last week to maybe talk to family, talk to possible healthcare agents, or at least contemplate healthcare agents. Continue to think about Wish 1 and Wish 2. Read, research, listen, gather info, get with your buddy, and work on your checklist. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen so we have more space to connect. And I'd just love to hear from folks if they want to share, like, what was this process of contemplation like? And did you work on any of this stuff? And do you think or dream or contemplate any of this? So I'd love to hear from whoever. You can unmute.
I'll be glad to go. Yay. Yes, I and my buddy, we decided to really consider these things and just pencil in, really read it through deeply, and I found it took me in a really deep journey that especially the aspect of community, having a health agent team, and with my current circumstances, that doesn't exist. And so the dichotomy between me really believing in community and the reality of walking that out to this degree. I mean, I contacted some people about this, and I got really triggered. And then another person, their religious organization has all of this already in order. And so as this was the first toe in a deep pool, and so I can see I've got a journey to go on here. So I'm really glad for my buddy Lyndon.
Oh, thank you.
Can you say more, if you're willing, about people getting triggered when you bring this topic up?
Oh, yeah, they go right into a care mode, like the fact that I was considering this must be something there's drastically wrong, or that I'm, that there was, and I invited them to, if they'd like to see the material, never answer me back. And so I'm like, well, that, that's okay. They're a friend, and they, that person is in a different place than I am. And so I will continue with people that really, there's a flow for it. So
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, so this idea of like, oh my God, something's wrong with you, you must be dying, or gosh, I don't want to look at this paperwork because then I'm gonna have to think about this. Interesting.
yeah.
Interesting. Well, you've planted seeds, and that's all we can do, particularly with folks who might be activated by this topic. So beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Anyone else want to share?
What was the prompt? I'm sorry to be a pain.
Yeah, no problem. The prompt is any contemplation, thoughts, any homework that you did that you want to share, anything that happened this week with your buddy, just any sort of check-in thoughts at all.
Yeah, I would like to, if it's okay.
Please.
So I talked to both of my adult children over the last weekend, and had hoped that the three of us could talk all at once. But that didn't happen, but I was able to have conversations with each one of them, and gave them a heads up that I had homework and I'm trying to do it, and that I need their help. And I was one of my kids has been through some hard stuff in the last, 4 years. So I was a little concerned that this might be sort of triggering, for him, that he might be worried. They both lost their father in their young adulthood. So it's a little, it's complicated positing my checking out. But it turns out that he took it very well and just was like, yeah, I think it's so great that you're doing this. A lot of people don't want to deal with this at all, and I'm grateful you're doing it. And and I said to Helen, she's going to get this in order, and then she's going to put it aside and live for another 20 years. So that was really helpful. And then I think Nance spoke a little bit about our conversation, which was really wonderful. Really was so happy to connect with her, and we supported each other and kind of talking about our homework. And so that helped me to actually recommit to the homework. And I did go back to my kids, and we have scheduled a time for the three of us to talk on Sunday at 5. And I'm happy about that. And then I talked with a younger friend that I have who's in his early 40s to give him a heads up that I would like him to be on my team. And he readily agreed. He's in religious life, so he gets it, and he's comfortable talking about it. And then Nance also inspired me to start reading this, which I had. It's the Being Mortal book. And I had it sitting here and I hadn't read it, but I've read the first 88 pages, and it's challenging. I will say I find it challenging, but also really good. So I'm grateful. I'm glad to be with you here. Sorry if I went on too long.
Yeah, that's a celebration, just to take a minute to celebrate that your kids were receptive, that your potential healthcare agent was receptive, that you got inspired by your buddy and you made another date, like that, like gold stars, like all around. Like that's awesome. That's just a big celebration.
Me. Thank you. I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm really grateful for you all. So grateful for this, for this group, because this wouldn't be happening,
Yeah.
And I had wanted to do this with you last year and I was too late getting involved. So yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
You might want to change your name, Lyndon, because it says supporter on there. It's the three dots on your little picture box.
Yep.
Anybody else want to share?
I'm happy to go next. I'll mention that I had every intention to connect with my accountability buddy, but we did not meet. And I too want to thank you, Lee, for this opportunity for this session. It's just great. I have been overwhelmed with work this last day, not a moment to spare. So that was why I didn't connect with her. But I did start doing some things. I started purging. I had purged 3 bags full of things from my closet. And then today we had, my sisters and I met for a couple of hours on Zoom. And I asked them about their favorite church songs. We all go to church and we used to attend the same church. I don't any longer, but anyway, they gave me the names of them and I documented them. And then I also have been doing some research after our last session and trying to organize the thoughts and information that you shared with us. And yeah, I intend to speak with my sisters gradually, just kind of pull them in and do some things. And on my list of things to do that I have alert on my phone is to again call my the funeral service that I intend to work with and start making payments on my arrangements, because I have not done that. So this is prompting me and motivating me and pushing me to do more about getting things set up, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh yeah, those are big steps. Those are huge. Yeah, the funeral arrangement payments, the sisters, the slowly introducing topics to family members. That's great. And yeah, I think the buddy system can assist, because I think all of us get stuck on next steps sometimes. So if we can retain that system of support. Excellent. Anybody else who wants to check in? Well, Judy.
Hi, and it's good to see all of you. And I'm just sharing, like, here's a story of not such tangible progress, but so sort of spontaneously. Well, Leslie and I reached out to a friend of ours, a friend who told us about this workshop, to set up a time to get together. So we initiated that conversation, and we'll see how that goes. The spontaneous thing that happened that wasn't on our to-do list was we had a conversation with friends who are part of our same intentional community. It just kind of came up after or during a meal, like, hey, we've done this workshop, and just talked about what was shared, and kind of what just different people then talked about some of their thoughts regarding end of life and things that they've known about. So, and we mentioned the 5 wishes as a framework. And so even though that was not on our to-do list at all, or not what we were thinking as a next step, it was a conversation that really felt good to have with people and to share about the workshop, especially since a lot of the people in the group have had major health issues in recent years, and we're all over 50. Not that people under 50 aren't mortal also, but so it was just like, all right, here's a way that this blossomed into a conversation that felt good to have.
Yeah, so I'm hearing that it wasn't on your to-do list, but it came up. And then it's because you're in community with these people, and there's health issues and there's aging issues. And so it was like really well timed in place that you could bring this up. And who knows, maybe some of those people will want to take the class or want to be part of, people to continue the conversation. That's deaf literate community right there. So excellent. Really good. More planting of seeds. Thank you. Who else wants to share? Anyone else? Kelly.
Hi. There's a lot going on hearing everybody talk. But I really love normalizing death, and I'm hearing so much of that, and that's it's just I'm embracing all of it. It feels really, really great. A couple of things came up. Sally was my buddy, is my buddy. And she asked a question that I wrote down, and I looked back at it several times, and it had to do with readiness. Like, what will it take for me to be ready? And it was such a great question. You know, it just covered so much about getting things in dying order, and not regretting that I didn't take care of certain things. And so I started looking at, well, I've been looking for an attorney. So if any of you have a good attorney, and also she had a question about her doctor, and it brought up my doctor. And I thought, actually, I don't think my doctor is really wholly aligned with where I am. And, but I'd like to check in with him. But then when I said him, that didn't feel right. I felt like some holding in my body that I really want a her. And, or even a we, they, I just am feeling like that would be feeling better for me. So, yeah, and I did talk to my son and my husband, and I spoke to a friend last night who came over, and she wants to talk about this further. And she's a person that I would like to add to my team. But I've been thinking about my team, and looking at strengths of certain people, and yeah, I've been doing that. And I wanted to share also that last week I had shared with you about a friend who was very sick, and she actually died while we were together, all of us, at 4:00 last Friday. And she's been this amazing teacher for me with this process, because she didn't die at home. She didn't have all of her people. It was just huge to have this happening at the same time. So I've been with that.
Wow, what a blessing.
Yeah, huge,
Thank you. Thank
beautiful
you for
blessing.
sharing that. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you so much. Welcome, Kelly. I wanted to introduce Kelly. Kelly, we went really deep last week, and here we are. And I wanted to say Kelly is a previous attendee of this class. And so I offer previous attendees to come to any future classes for a discounted rate. And she didn't make it last week, but she's here now. So she's been through this process. And I just wanted you to see her face, and you can see the people on the screen, Kelly, but we've been in a really sweet place. So I'm sure you'll get right into the flow. And there's one person on here that's the name of owner, and I'm assuming, or I'm guessing, John and Dee, that might be your extra computer. Is that right?
I think so.
That's correct.
Okay, great. Thanks. Just wanted to.
Do you want to say something?
Please,
Oh.
yes, go ahead.
We decided this would be more efficient.
Yeah.
And we were inspired by
That's
Judy
better.
and Leslie, because it was kind of complicated. And I'm sorry for that. But in addressing your question, I was very, I don't know, overwhelmed, but not in like an, oh my God, I can't do the work, but more of a, I was just so moved. And I felt that with Ellie's friend, who she mentioned last time, that we were already kind of a death team for her and her friend in this processing that we began. And it's very moving. And I feel like I'm ready to do the work, but I had not realized how moving it would be to actually, jump in and get wet and be in the flow of it. So I'm very grateful to what we're all doing, and you as being my team right now, and to you, Lee, for sharing all your experience and knowledge and life's experience, firsthand experience. Right after our meeting last week, I called up, and everyone I kind of had picked for my team. Most people confirmed and honored me with gratitude to be part of it. And I had this imagining of getting together between now and whenever I may become more not well, and just comparing notes and talking like we're talking. So they all know my mind and I know theirs. And I could imagine that some of them may be part of my caregivers, even not just the council of this group effort, but people that I would want to sing to me or put their hands on me, or people I've known for so long and they're younger, some my age. And everyone said yes. I mean, it was so easy because we're in it. I mean, we're in it, and we relate to it. And some of my friends were like, "What? Tell me about it." And I did. And I'm like, I'll share with you, but you need to do it because it's different reading about it. It's different. However much you think you might know what you don't know until you really start, I think, talking with others about it and sharing that space. And then I was all gung ho. And once the week kind of hits me and it kind of life grabs me up, and sometimes I don't know when it's going to put me down again. So I went on your website and I loved the video of Kimchi. And in fact, I had this fantasy that she was quite a personality and Kimchi was her spicy nickname or something. Anyway, it was lovely. And I'm so grateful for her truth and that sharing that she gave all of us through you. So anyway, I just want to say I'm so grateful.
Yay, I love the piece about talking to people and young people and potentially putting them on notice for being caregivers in the process of end of life. I love that idea. And I think, not only like healthcare agent, but like, hey, I'm gonna need this and this and this. Like, can I put you on the list to contact when that time comes? I love that. That's really great. Surround yourself with people you love and community. Well, let's stop there with the sharing and we'll do more. There's more to come in terms of sharing. Thank you all so much. I'm gonna do, and the Kimchi thing, like she would be delighted that you saw her video, and we're gonna see more about Kimchi today. So, yeah, so I put the link for my webpage, which is that resource page, in the chat again. So if you need it handy, you can get there. But these were our homeworks, assignments. Let's see the agenda and the schedule today. I mean, you sort of saw how fast it went last week. It's going to go fast again. Here we are, 2 o'clock. We're going to do sharing. We're going to do wishes 3, 4, and 5. We're going to do signature notary page. We're going to do a dementia, touch on a dementia directive, talk about the MOST form and the DNR form, and then look at some after death options. We're going to take a break somewhere in there. We'll see how the flow and the timing goes, around 4-ish. And then some after death paperwork, some financial considerations, some building a death positive community, and review the checklist, and just sort of continue to process what's there for folks. Let's see, is this page open for sharing? The resource page I like to keep for just the people who take this class. Because my addendum is on there and I'm happy for y'all to use it, but I'd rather it not be like publicly posted. So, use it for as long as you need to use it. And then ideally just share the main page and people can register for the class. And then anything you find on there that you have links to, go ahead, you can happily share those separately. Okay, so I wanted to talk just briefly about this healthcare medical power of attorney. I did list on my page this link that says healthcare medical legal power of attorney, is because I recently heard from someone who took my class that she went to a lawyer and she brought all her paperwork, and the lawyer said, well, the 5 wishes are not, they really want a legal document that just specifies who the healthcare power of attorney is. So that's just another name for healthcare agent, right? It's the same word we're using with the 5 wishes. And even though the 5 wishes says it's a legally binding document, some institutions or some situations, they be like, what is this? This is woo-woo. You've got all this woo-woo stuff in here about what you want. We just want a legal document that tells us who's making decisions for you. So you'll find in a lot of this paperwork that there's a lot of redundancies, and I just do the redundancies. I just do the extra paperwork because like someone else is going to resonate with this thing rather than this thing. So once you have your healthcare agent decided, then you can just go ahead and fill out. And the link I have on the website is for a North Carolina medical or healthcare power of attorney. If you live in a different state, just Google it, just Google, whatever state you're in, healthcare or medical power of attorney. So I thought that was interesting, I'm going to put the link right here directly to the form so you can see it. I thought that was interesting that the lawyer said, well, we want to keep your 5 wishes, and the 5 wishes, in some ways can guide the people who are, guiding the process in your life, your agents, your family, your friends, your healthcare people. But we want a legal document that looks like 1 page or whatever, 2 pages, legal, signed, etc. So I'm like, okay, whatever, throw it into the file. So that's just another piece. I guess we'll step right into wishes 3, 4, and 5. They're shorter and a little bit less complex than wishes 1 and 2. So
Lee, can I
yes,
interject something?
please.
I wrote some time ago a living will for myself that had a lot of this stuff in it. And I was really sort of perturbed by the fact that the various, I investigated Georgia and California and South Carolina legal documents. And it took me a while to figure out that the only thing that's important about the legality of the documents is that you meet the requirements of your jurisdiction for the number of witnesses and the number of notaries and things of that sort. They cannot specify anything else about how you go about wording your document other than anything that has to do with the legal requirement, such as if they have a particular way that you have to specify your healthcare agent, then you just go ahead and do that. If it's a separate document, you go ahead and do it separately. But this is the point I wanted to make to everybody, is that they can't say that you have to have a particular wording for example, how you say X, Y, or Z about your care. Other than that, you can be as detailed and as weird as you like. They don't get to micromanage that. They only get to micromanage, does it have to be notarized? How many witnesses? And
Awesome.
maybe stuff like you got to have a separate, you may in your jurisdiction have to have a separate healthcare designation form. I think that's it. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, there's lots of opinions about this, and I don't know if there's one right answer, because our world is is like that. So I agree, like just do the forms that are for your state and do the extra form. You know, it doesn't cost anything other than the time, and then you got to get it witnessed or whatever. But, you know, just have it in your folder, sort of what I do. I'm like, okay, I'll do this form. Now it's in my folder. So it's there. Thank you, John. Let's see, let's go ahead and read. It's page 8 on my booklet. Carmen, do you feel up for reading the top italicized first paragraph there? You're muted. Yeah, just, there you go. Great.
I was just finding the page.
Oh, right.
The next 3 wishes deal with my personal, spiritual, and emotional wishes. They are important to me. I want to be treated with dignity near the end of my life. So I would like people to do things written in wishes 3, 4, and 5 when they can be done. I understand that my family, my doctors, and other healthcare providers, my friends, and others may not be able to do these things or are not required by law to do these things. I do not expect the following wishes to place new or added legal duties on my doctors or other healthcare providers. I also do not expect these wishes to excuse my doctor or other healthcare providers from giving me the proper care asked for by law.
Thank you so much. Cynthia, would you please read wish 3?
Yes. My wish for how comfortable I want to be, please cross out anything you don't agree with. I do not want to be in pain. I want my doctor to give me enough medicine to relieve my pain, even if that means I will be drowsy or sleep more than I would otherwise. If I show signs of depression, nausea, shortness of breath, or hallucinations, I want my caregivers to do whatever they can to help me. I wish to have a cool, moist cloth put on my head if I have a fever. I want my lips and mouth kept moist to stop dryness. I wish to have warm baths often. I wish to be kept clean and fresh at all times. I wish to be massaged with warm oils as often as I can be. I wish to have my favorite music played when possible until my time of death. I wish to have personal care like shaving, nail clipping, hair brushing, and teeth brushing, as long as they do not cause me pain or discomfort. I wish to have religious readings and well-loved poems read aloud when I'm near death. I wish to know about options for hospice care to provide medical, emotional, and spiritual care for me and my loved ones.
Thank you. That was clear and efficient. Thank you. Sally, do you feel up for reading wish 4?
Okay. Wish 4, my wish for how I want people to treat me. Please cross out anything that you don't agree with. I wish to have people with me when possible. I want someone to be with me when it seems that death may come at any time. I wish to have my hand held and to be talked to when possible, even if I don't seem to respond to the voice or touch of others. I wish to have others by my side praying for me when possible. I wish to have the members of my faith community told that I am sick and asked to pray for me and visit me. I wish to be cared for with kindness and cheerfulness and not sadness. I wish to have pictures of my loved ones in my room near my bed. If I'm not able to control my bowel or bladder functions, I wish for my clothes and bed linens to be kept clean and for them to be changed as soon as they can if they have been soiled. I want to die in my home if that can be done.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Any thoughts about wishes 3 and 4 so far? Okay. Kenzie, would you read the left-hand column of wish 5?
Sure. Okay. My wish for what I want my loved ones to know. I wish to have my family and friends know that I love them. I wish to be forgiven for the times I have hurt my family, friends, and others. I wish to have my family, friends, and others know that I forgive them for when they may have hurt me in my life. I wish for my family and friends to know that I do not fear death itself. I think it is not the end, but a new beginning for me. I wish for all my family members to make peace with each other before my death, if they can. I wish for my family and friends to think about what I was like before I became seriously ill. I want them to remember me in this way after my death.
Thank you. Kelly, are you, can you read the next column?
Yes. I wish for family and friends and caregivers to respect my wishes, even if they don't agree with them. I wish for my family and friends to look at my dying as a time of personal growth for everyone, including me. This will help me live a meaningful life in my final days. I wish for my family and friends to get counseling if they have trouble with my death. I want memories of my life to give them joy and not sorrow. After my death, I would like my body to be either buried or cremated. My body or remains should be put in the following location. The following person knows my funeral wishes.
Excellent, thank you. Carmen, would you pick back up on just those 3 sections at the bottom there on my page 9?
Yeah. If anyone asks how I want to be remembered, please say the following about me. If there is to be a memorial service for me, I wish that this service to include the following: list music, songs, reading, or other specific requests that you have. Please use the space below for any other wishes. For example, you may want to donate any or all parts of your body when you die. You may also wish to designate a charity to receive memorial contributions. Please attach a separate sheet of paper if you need more space.
Thank you. I am just navigating to the addendum right now. Because I just wanted to go through what I have. I'm not going to read every little thing here, but I'm going to summarize, and I think you could probably see my screen. You also have access to my addendum. So under wish 3, how comfortable I want to be, I've written about like, hey, this is my diet. Please don't give me hospital food, sugary foods, that kind of thing. I like fasting. I'm probably going to want to fast towards the end of my life. Nature connection is really important to me. Opening windows, making sure I can see the sky, be on the earth if possible, have fresh air. I prefer loose bed linens. I actually hate tucked corners. It makes me a little crazy. So I wanted to be sure to put that in there. It's okay to play like, the Schumann Resonance or the Pandora Buddhist Monks or something relaxing, but absolutely no TV or radio, especially with advertising. I don't listen to that kind of stuff in life. I don't want to listen to it when I'm dying. Personal space, but yes, I don't like artificially scented candles. I like beeswax or other sort of, aromatherapy stuff. I have had an altar my entire adult life, so I would welcome that, even for the caregivers to contribute to the altar. Women-centered imagery is encouraged, and don't put makeup or cosmetics on my body. That's wish 3. Wish 4, how I want people to treat me. I want to have close friends with me. And I listed some folks. I wish to be cared for with kindness, presence, and connection. Please honor my pace, style, and flow. I wish to die in my home. And then let's see, in terms of like prayer, I put soulful, spiritual, deep conversations are welcome. Poetry is welcome. I encourage conversation about death and dying, about feelings, and please refrain from God talk is what I put, because I don't resonate with that. And then for wish 5, what I want my loved ones to know, I just wrote a few philosophical pieces here. I believe everyone has a right to a good death. Here's what my spiritual practices have been. It's not so important how others remember me, but here are my reflections on my life, and here's what's been true for me in this life. I said, please create a loving, comfortable space for caregivers so that they can process and, hang out and have a smoke or have a donut or whatever it is they need to do, not, do their thing. I know that when we were tending someone who was dying, we were doing a lot of hanging out, talking, processing, and that was, we wanted that to be separate from the dying person, but we really wanted to be able to do that. So I wanted to give, can we set up a space for that? And then after my passing, I'm going to talk about this a little more in the other document. And then there's a little bit about memorial service there. So I am going to stop this share. And again, I think the addendum is a great place for belief systems around this kind of stuff. You may not resonate with everything on this list, so cross it out if you don't. And then, feel free to take any of the stuff from my addendum. I'm going to do a little bit of a breakout room now, not with your buddy necessarily, just random. And I think I see your question, and we'll do questions before we go into breakout rooms. I think just talking a little bit about wishes 3, wishes 4, and wishes 5, what resonates, what doesn't resonate, ideas that you may have to add to your addendum, things you want to cross out, anything at all about these 3 wishes. Questions before you go? Kelly.
What about like an addendum to include stuff around COVID, like whether we want to, all our preferences around that.
Sure.
Where would we include that? What wish would that be?
I mean, are you saying what exactly around COVID? And you're saying for the folks who are caregiving you?
Yeah, vaccine, masks, booster shots, these drugs that they're coming out with now. Who knows what else is coming? But just wondering, how do you write that in here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that could go under wish 3 or wish 4, right?
Okay.
So this is what I want, this is my preference for who's around me, who's not around me. This is my preference for the environment that I'm in. Again, you may not get it, but it's back to that thing, like holding one hand exactly what you want and hold in the other hand that you may not get any of it.
Yeah.
That sort of, Buddhist approach in a way. Yeah, great. Good thoughts. Anyone else? Any other questions, suggestions before you go? How much time do you feel like you need to talk about this? Does like 7 minutes feel like enough? Lyndon, yeah.
So we're going to be in pairs. I mean, it depends how much we, time per person. So yeah, maybe 7, 3 minutes each.
Yeah, some of you will be with 3 people. So why don't we do 8 and then I'll do a call back. So you'll have a good amount of time. Okay. Let's see if everybody's where they need to be. All right. That looks like a fun room to be in. Carmen and Kenzie and Sally.
Yeah, that's good.
Any shares? Anybody who hasn't shared yet today that would like to share?
Well, one thing that I'm aware of is that while my hope is to be at home at end of life, I think it's not always possible. There are sometimes reasons why that can't happen, like, if someone has severe dementia, you know, um, really severe pain management issues, and having seen a couple of people have their end of life in facilities, I know that caregivers are busy and often wouldn't take the time to read something that's really lengthy and detailed. And so my mind goes to prioritizing what's most important and saying that really clearly up front, very concisely, to make it more accessible and more likely to be used by caregivers who are not friends or family.
Yeah, I love that. Prioritize and bullet point, make it concise. That's great. What are the most important things? Very
Yeah.
good. Thank you.
I will share a couple of key points from my perspective. One of the things that I would do when is to copy the 3 wishes, make a copy on a document, and then highlight the ones, the points that I like, edit the ones that I want to edit, and delete the ones that aren't concerning for me. Then I would need to share with you that the fact that things are different in the Black community. Black community, because of healthcare disparities. A lot of those things that are listed there would not be applicable for Black community members, unfortunately. Only would some of those things happen if I had a family member who was there 24 hours a day, sitting with me and advocating for me. Otherwise, that wouldn't happen for me.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. So yeah, cultural differences that some of these aren't applicable or appropriate or accessible to the Black community. Yeah. Thank you. That's, we can feel some grief about that and the reality of that. So thank you. So yeah, taking it into a document and sort of making it your own. Adapting and amending. Great. I see Sally and Nance. Go ahead, Sally.
Yeah, we were talking about about pain and comfort, and Kenzie had a good suggestion that I wanted to share about how can you say what it is you really want around that? It's a very fuzzy issue. In case you have an opportunity to have someone attend to you about that. And she said that you could ask to have trials, try different medications so that you could have a vote about what works and what doesn't for you, as far as how groggy it makes you or how effective the pain management is.
Mm-hmm.
And then it might be good to spell out that.
Yeah.
List.
Yeah, very good, y'all. Yeah, I think I talked about this a little bit last week, and I think I have a sentence about this in my addendum under number 2, which may be better to move to number 3, which 3. But yeah, there's a lot of different schools of thought about this, and hospice is going to do what hospice does, which is, generally speaking, they're going to give enough pain medication so that there's not what they call breakthrough pain. And that's a pretty high amount of pain meds, like you're pretty wonked out. And so if you have a different philosophy, like the whole Stephen Jenkinson philosophy is use minimal pain meds, and you have a sense of your pain threshold and you know what works and what doesn't, you might add that. And you might not get a choice, but you might have caregivers who are willing to, to sort of experiment in that realm. It's really hard when someone is in a lot of pain to have them have breakthrough pain. It's really scary for caregivers. It's really scary for the patient. And so that's why hospice sort of defaults to that. And, but sure, write down if you have thoughts and feelings and opinions about this. I think I put like try alternative things like acupuncture, meditation, marijuana, if it's legal, that kind of stuff. But yeah, if you have thoughts, put it down. I view dying as an opportunity for spiritual growth, and I'm willing to experience some pain. Yeah, I think pain and discomfort for the sake of having more consciousness. Yeah, I love that. Because we don't have a very death literate community, we have this sort of one size fits all approach. And so, until more people are experimenting with this stuff and writing about it, blogging about it, videoing about it, we're a little bit in the dark. So thanks for bringing that up. Nance.
Is the 5 wishes available as a Word document? Is editable?
That's a good question. I don't know. Go on their site. I think so.
If you have the software, like I was able to just take the PDF and just save it as a document, and then that converts it to a Word document.
Thanks, Cynthia. I'll check and see if I have that capability.
Yeah.
If you don't, I could send it to you.
Oh, thank you. I'll just go ahead and send you my email address right up front here. And then Lee, Stephen Jenkins, are his materials on the resources page?
Yeah, it's Jenkinson, and it's Die Wise is the book, and Grief Walker is the film. And I haven't read the book, but I've seen him speak in public, and pain and this sort of obliteration of pain is like, it's a hot topic for him. I don't know if what he talks about in the book, I'd be curious if someone has read it, if they know. But yeah, you can investigate and see it, especially if you can get a hold of a lecture of his. Sort of interesting stuff. I don't have an opinion about this because I don't have a huge pain tolerance. So I don't know what I'm going to do in that situation. I just really don't know.
Yes, thank you very much. I am, as I read through this and then discussing this is wonderful for how many blocks I am facing emotionally. And so, yeah, I'll just, if I get the opportunity to talk more about that later about, complete the 5 wishes, but boy, I'm going to be a different person after I take the steps I need. I know through this class that I need to do to get where I want to be about my 5 wishes. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think of it as a living document. Like every time I do this class and I sit with y'all, I'm like, oh, I got to change all this stuff. And I procrastinate too. Like I got, some model of like perfect paperwork done. So I need my own buddy system right now to update my stuff. Cause I think it's been 2 years. So, but this keeps me on it, All right, let's move towards the signature page. For me, it's the different booklets really flip this around, but for me, the signature page is on page 10. And it has a little section at the top, and it says, you put your name, ask my family, doctors, healthcare providers, friends, to follow my wishes. This form becomes valid. Let's see. This form becomes valid when I am unable to make decisions or speak for myself. If any part of this form cannot be legally followed, I ask that all other parts of the form be followed. Revoke any healthcare advance directives I have made before. So there's a signature there. You have to sign it in front of witnesses. So don't sign it ahead of time. Make sure you're around the witnesses when you sign it. This can happen at the bank. You know, I went to the bank and the tellers were the witnesses. And then the notarization is at the bottom. So it makes the document more official. Lyndon, thoughts
Yeah,
about that?
I just wanted to suggest that witnesses should not be your agent or shouldn't be family members, should be disinterested. So like you said, a bank person, bank people.
Yeah, I mean, we got into legal hot water in one context where we had witnesses be part of the recipients of the will, and that's a huge no-no. But I'm not sure if that's a no-no here. I've always taken classes around this, and we sign each other's witness forms, witness pages. So you might be right, and to be safe, probably that's true.
Just
okay.
the other thing real quickly, because I used to practice law in 2 states. And so all of this is governed by each state's law. And so you really can't make universal statements about what will be legal what will be legal everywhere, because it really varies from state to state. But often there's ways to do these documents by yourself. If you can Google that. Anyway.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and that may be why this is such a template and it's broad reaching, but then you can have the form for your state. That is the healthcare power attorney. That is what your state wants to see, sort of like John was saying before. So thank you. That's really helpful. Okay, so now I have on page 11, it might be a different page for you, what to do after you complete the 5 wishes. Do y'all see that one?
Yeah.
Okay, Ms. Betty, would you read those bullet points at the top there?
Sorry, what page are you on?
I'm on page 11, and the title is What to Do After You Complete 5 Wishes. It might be a different page in your booklet.
Okay, I see it. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Oh, shoot, I lost it. Okay. What to do after you complete 5 wishes. Make sure you sign and witness the form just the way it says in the directions. Then your 5 wishes will be legal and valid. Talk about your wishes with your healthcare agent, family members, and others who care about you. Give them copies of your completed 5 wishes. Keep the original copy you signed in a special place in your home. Do not put it in a safe deposit box. Keep it nearby so that someone can find it when you need it. Fill out the wallet card below. Carry it with you. That way people will know where you keep the 5 wishes. Talk to your doctor during your next office visit. Give your doctor a copy of your 5 wishes. Make sure that it is put in your medical record. Be sure your doctor understands your wishes and is willing to follow them. Ask him or her to tell other doctors who treat you to honor them. If you are admitted to the hospital or nursing home, take a copy of your 5 wishes with you. Ask that it be put in your medical records. I have given the following copies of my completed 5 wishes, and you list the names there.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, so the 5 wishes wallet card, I have clipped that out and put it in my wallet. In the case of accident, that if someone's looking through my stuff, they can say, oh, this person has, this document, where is it? They say not to keep it in a safe deposit box, and you can understand why, because if you're suddenly incapacitated, who knows where the combination code or the key to that safe deposit box is, right? It's like some ways the worst place to keep it. This is a plastic, what do you call it, file thing. And one of the common places to put these documents is in the freezer. Because this is plastic, so it's not going to get stuff wet, even if things defrost or the power goes out or something. But the freezer is somewhat fireproof, and everyone generally has one in their kitchen, and it's super easy to get to for, you know, ambulance people or anybody. And it's sort of being encouraged to be this universal place for us to keep these documents, because if everyone keeps them there, then we'll just know where they are in everybody's house. I don't actually keep mine there because I have a little tiny fridge, and I don't have a big freezer. So I keep them in my little file folder, which is, you know, not fireproof, but it's the easiest place for me to keep them. And I have it well labeled, and I sort of keep everything together. But if you get one of these little plastic things, you can keep them in your freezer. I also email it to anybody who's named in them, like anybody who's named in the addendum, anybody, you know, even if a good friend of mine didn't want to be a healthcare agent, I would email it to that friend, because they can pull it up in their email. They can send it to someone if someone asks. I've also put it in a Google Drive and shared the link with people so they can sort of search for it if they need to. And I put everything together. This is also requiring software. Cynthia referred to this like Adobe Acrobat, but I put all the documents, because I scanned them after they were notarized, or, you know, you can have a little scanning thing on your phone. And then I put it together all in one PDF. So it's just like one document to send to people. Yeah, printing out is also good. Having a printed copy, all of that is like a lot of administrative stuff. So if you can't do all of that, do some of that. But digital, I think, is really helpful. What else? There's somebody told me this, and I'll pass it along, but I haven't experienced this. There's apps like in case of emergency app on your phone, where, you know, you can list some of this stuff. Apparently your healthcare agent person, or maybe even your wishes or where your documents are. And like, if someone needs to get into your phone in a case of emergency, this app can, you know, do its thing. If the person is a part of a faith community, perhaps, I'm reading a chat thing, perhaps, yeah, the minister, rabbi, church secretary, that's a great idea. I wonder if they do that. I love that. Or if you're part of a community, sometimes, you know, intentional communities, they might keep like a little, in case of emergency, they could put a copy of the 5 wishes there. That's a great idea. Other thoughts about storage or signing or disseminating? Okay, you might want to pull your checklist up. This is a big celebration. We completed the 5 wishes, but you might want to add to your checklist, you know, anything about wishes 3, 4, and 5. Anything about signing and notarizing, anything about sending to beloveds, you know, putting dates in about when you think you might want to complete that can help you focus. Most banks notarize. What else? Who else notarizes? Are there services? Are there city services that notarize? Maybe you're saying yes, Judy. Maybe some.
Like city clerks or town clerks often notarize, and we'll do it for free.
Yeah. I know our little local college, community college, AB Tech, their administrators have notaries often. Maybe church folks have notaries, community members could put it out on Facebook, see if someone's willing to notarize. Any other thoughts? All right. Congratulations. We completed the 5 wishes. Yay. Big celebration. Great. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. Okay.
Lee, before you move on, I put it in chat, but I emailed you a document with the 5 wishes. I mean, with wishes as a document instead of a PDF. So,
Okay, so it's a doc.
yes.
Okay, and that's what folks were looking for, and I should add that to my resource page. Great. Great, that's great. Okay, so this is the slide that's reviewing where we've been. We saw this slide once before. This is the categories of end of life paperwork. And we had talked about these 3 columns. The first column is the living healthcare, meaning if you're still alive, but you're not necessarily capable of making decisions, there's all these words that are sort of saying the same thing: living will, advanced care, advanced life directives, 5 wishes, healthcare power of attorney, healthcare agent. It's listed there twice. And then we're going to go through the DNR the most. So we've only done that first category. We haven't even completed it fully yet. Then there's the after death care, which we're going to talk about, and the financial stuff, which we're going to talk a little bit about. Any thoughts on any of that? Kenzie?
Okay, so this sort of like this kind of death will is different than like a financial will or things that you would want to leave behind.
Exactly. What we've just done is one particular version of what's often called a living will or an advanced care or an advanced life directives. It's just telling people what you want done while you're still alive. Right? So living will is a confusing term, has nothing to do with any kind of finances. We're going to talk a little bit about finances. I'm not qualified to give financial advice, but I will give you an overview about the kinds of things that you should tend to around finances, but that's a different document. Exactly.
Okay, so would you have to seek out like an attorney, or like, do you know anybody that offers classes on the financial side?
Yeah, mostly it's about attorneys, but we're going to get there and I'll tell you more about that.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so this also falls under the living will and of, advanced care directives. It's a dementia directive, and I have this link on my website. I'm also going to put it here in the chat for y'all. Super accessible, same sort of style as the 5 wishes in that it's like a standard template. And they say on this site that the #1 reason people lose the ability to guide their own care is because of dementia. So it's a whole world unto itself. And then this dementia directive is a way to sort of guide that care if that happens, right? So, and it's also really hard on families because sometimes it could be, a long, slow process where the person is going in and out of consciousness, right? It's confusing. So the dementia document, I would say, could be, in your documents in addition to the 5 wishes. That's how I have it. What else do I want to say? Each state has a designated version of a standard care. Okay, right. So here are the 4 things, sort of like wish 2 in the 5 wishes, where it said, if you remember wish 2, where it said, if I'm close to death, these are the 3 options. If I'm in a coma, not expected to wake up, these are the 3 options. If I have permanent or severe brain damage, these are the 3 options. It's very similar in the dementia directive that they do mild, moderate, and severe dementia, and you actually have the same choices each time. So I'm just going to read these to you so you get a sense, and it's very similar, but they use slightly different language. So for mild, moderate, and severe dementia, you'll need to make this choice each time. But the first choice is to live for as long as I can. I would want full efforts to prolong my life, including efforts to restart my heart if it stops beating. The second choice is to receive treatments to prolong my life, but if my heart stops beating or I can't breathe on my own, I would not want my heart shocked to restart it, and I would not want to be put on a breathing machine. Instead, if either of these happens, allow me to die peacefully. It's got a reason why there. If I took a sudden turn for the worse, my dementia would likely be worse if I survived, blah, blah, blah. The third option is to only receive care in the place where I am living. I would not want to go to the hospital, even if I were very ill, and I would not want to be resuscitated. Do not resuscitate. DNR stands for do not resuscitate. We're going to talk about that more. If a treatment such as antibiotics might keep me alive longer and could be given in a place where I was living, then I would want such care. But if I continued to get worse, I would not want to go to an emergency room or a hospital. Instead, I would want to be allowed to die peacefully. Reason, I would not want the possible risks and trauma which come from being in the hospital. And then the last choice here is to receive comfort care only, focus on relieving my suffering, such as pain, anxiety, or breathlessness. I would not want any care that could keep me alive longer. So there's 4 choices here instead of 3. In the 5 wishes, there were 3 choices. And so for each stage of dementia, you have those options. So you could print this out. You could check this for each section and then also sort of stick it in your documents, get it notarized with everything else. Any questions on the dementia care document? Thoughts, comments, suggestions?
It seems to me that it would be very helpful to, if you have all this stuff in a folder, to have a single sheet with a really large font saying this folder contains 5 wishes, dementia documents, so that immediately somebody knows that they've gotten to the right place.
I like that. Yeah, a little like a little sticker on the front or taped on the front, or a little thing on a cover page, a table of contents, index. I like that.
Very simple.
Yeah, I like that. That's great. Thank you. Any other thoughts on the dementia? You're familiar with this stuff. This is very much the template style, like the 5 wishes. It's just applicable for dementia. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to move on to these 2 forms, which is sort of still in that you're still alive, but you're trying to direct what happens while you're still alive. If I were with you in person, I have a ton of these. I ordered hundreds of them. And they're bright. They're very bright, as you can see. So let's do the pink one first. And I have a link on my website for where to get this, but this one, I'm pretty sure this is a North Carolina. Yeah, it's an NCDHHS form. So if you live in a different state, see if you can find the form online, and you can order these for like 40 cents or something from the state. And again, I would love to give them away because they take up a lot of space in my file folder. So here we go with redundancy again. You're going to see some of the same things you already addressed in the 5 wishes, but this speaks to institutions in a language that they know and relate to. If you are going into the hospital or a care facility or any kind of thing, they're going to have you fill this out. And the reason it's bright is that you might have a health folder that's really thick, maybe with, notes from the doctor, x-rays, test results, and this thing is easy to find, right? It's super bright. And sometimes we'll talk about the DNR, you post it on your wall, but in this one you can too. Usually people don't post these on their wall until they're in some kind of dying phase. But it's interesting to put this in your folder, at least preliminary fill it out. It requires the signature of a doctor. So this is like when you're engaging with the medical industry, if you're engaging with the system, this is the kind of thing they'll encourage you to fill out. So it's got your name on the front, and then it has section A. Do you want cardiopulmonary resuscitation, and you say attempted or don't attempt it. Section B is medical intervention. What do I want? Do I want the full scope of treatment? Do I want limited intervention, or I only want comfort measures, right? Comfort measures means don't do a bunch of invasive stuff. I just want to be kept clean and dry and pain-free, and that's it. And then there's section C, which is antibiotics, section D, which is medically administered fluids and nutrition, and section E is who decided on this. Was it the patient themselves that decided on this, or was it the guardian or the child or whatever? And then there's a section for signature for the doctor. It's the MD, the DO, which is an osteopath, the PA, which is physician's assistant, or nurse practitioner. So if you have a nurse practitioner, let's talk about doctors. If you have a nurse practitioner that you like, they can also sign this form. And then you sign it, and then on the back, if you're looking at it on my website, you'll see that the back has a review date. So if you're in and out of the hospital, if you're in and out of a care facility, they can sort of keep making sure this form is updated and where you want to be. Any questions about the most document? Another redundant form, which is great. You want that. Whatever language they speak, you want to speak it also. Okay.
Lee, I'm having trouble finding it on your website. What's it under?
Let me get there. Specific medical orders, most document, and do not resuscitate.
Oh, here it is. Okay. Okay, thanks.
And did you say that this needs to be state specific?
Yep.
So you need to find the one for your state. Okay.
And
And is the most the same as the POLST?
Maybe it might be like slightly different, but I've heard people use other, acronyms for things. So maybe so. The most stands for medical orders for scope of treatment, but I have heard someone use, what is it, POST or something?
Yeah, it's physician orders for life-sustaining treatment.
Yeah, right. Yeah, sounds
the same,
like it. Yeah.
That's
right.
what we have in California, it looks like.
Yeah. Okay, good. Let me share the screen so I can be on the website and okay, so you can see the screen now, right? So this is the most document. You can see both pages here. The problem with printing it out is that you're not going to have this bright pink paper, which is sort of part of what makes the document sort of work. So I have on my website, again, this is North Carolina, to order both these forms, click here, and that takes you to this order form, right? The North Carolina Office of Emergency Medical Service, and you can see they're 4 cents each. They're literally 4 cents. So you're going to pay more for shipping than you will for these forms, which is why I ended up ordering 100, because I was just like, I'll just give these away while people are in my class. And then, of course, we're not doing things in person. So your state might have something like this.
Lee, I think most doctors' offices have them.
I think you're right. And doctors' offices, and also even, if you're going to go in for a procedure, they often have you fill stuff like this out, so you could get one of those. Hospitals, clinics, that kind of thing. Excellent. All right, so do not resuscitate is a whole conversation. And it's the yellow form, right? So let me get you. It's this bright yellow form. It says in a big red letters with a big stop sign, do not resuscitate. So, and on the form, it says, in the event of cardiac or pulmonary arrest of the patient, efforts at cardiopulmonary resuscitation of the patient should not be initiated. This order does not affect other medically indicated or comfort care. And then it's signed by the physician. And often people have these posted on their, above their bed, on their front door, on their refrigerator, because if emergency personnel come, they're inclined to resuscitate. I've even seen things go so far, and you can see this picture here as a tattoo on the chest, a do not resuscitate tattoo. Because some people feel so strongly about this. And I heard a story of someone going in for routine foot surgery and had this tattoo, and the doctor said, well, let's put some gauze and tape over that tattoo and cover that up. Right? Because the doctor was thinking, oh, this is just routine, you know. And she was like, no, that's the point. Like, that's the point of why I have this. So, you know, again, this is the inclination, often the inclination of these healthcare systems. And so if people want to be ultimately sure, and still, even if you have a tattoo, you might not ultimately, some people wear bracelets, right? Those medical bracelets. But certainly it seems like the tattoo might be the most effective. Any thoughts on the do not resuscitate? I don't experience people who are healthy and out and about and, you know, fully living life to have these do not resuscitate orders. Like, I don't know, would a doctor, oh, right, we're going to talk about doctors. Would a doctor, you know, sign a do not resuscitate order? Maybe, and maybe you can have it in your documents, but it's usually a form for when people are more actively dying. But try it if you want to get a copy and keep it in your stuff. And if you care about that and you want one of those, I would say try it. Yeah, so doctors, one of the interesting things that came up in a previous class was someone was like, I don't have a primary care physician and I want one to sort of, you know, and for them to be cognizant of all of my wishes. Who should I look for? And folks were saying, well, look for someone who has palliative or end of life experience. I really love nurse practitioners, and nurse practitioners, it seems like, can sign all of this stuff. They're usually very relational, and take a pretty one-on-one and sort of long-term care approach with people. It might be worth just, you know, a PA, a physician's assistant, also are generally kind of more available to have conversations and have a relationship with a whole person. Cynthia.
I'll just pop in to vouch for that. I'm on faculty at UC San Francisco, and I teach in a nurse practitioner education program where a lot of the nurse practitioners are specializing in geriatric care and palliative care. So there are more and more, they're called advanced practice nurses, or you can just refer to providers as a broad category. But you're right, they tend to be more relational, you know, more individualized in their care. Although, like every other provider, they're squeezed by a for-profit system that doesn't give them, you know, enough time with people.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I love the nurse practitioners I have in my life. They're deeply holistic. Other thoughts about do not resuscitate, about finding a doctor that can know your whole person and know your end of life wishes.
One thing that comes to mind is to be clear of the context for do not resuscitate in a end of life circumstance, as opposed to a directive which is may lead to an inadvertent pause for something that was a stupid electrical mishap that, you know, if there was a defibrillation would come back out of it just fine. So the context is really important. You don't want to have an EMT that could say, we're going to be fine. You just had something drop out and we can bring you back in good shape. Go, oh, shoot. So that's the only thing that comes to mind from my
Yeah,
background.
I mean, I think that, again, you know, in a sudden situation where you have some kind of accident, I don't think you're going to need to worry about them not resuscitating. Like, that's the default. Resuscitation is the default. And, you know, asking them not to resuscitate is sort of the thing that you have to sort of work harder at. But I get your point. And I think, you know, context is everything. And it might be, you know, worth you contemplating that and getting more specific about it. So that's really great. Kenzie writes, this has me contemplating many things. Is it possible to have a legal document for a birth plan? Somebody else might be able to answer that.
No. A birth plan isn't really, there's not any arrangement for it to be a legal document. And also, birth is such a dynamic and constantly evolving situation that there's nothing, I mean, just like death, there's nothing rigid, you know, and firm that you can write in advance and expect to be able to 100% adhere to, because things change.
Thank you.
But I guess I would also just chime in and say that I think there may not be as much law that has been created to govern such things, but you can create any kind of a document, you know, that has some legal heft to it. But again, it would be important to talk with your doctor, you know, whoever's going to be presiding. And it would be governed by the law of the state where the birth happens. So, you know, you could research that in advance and draw up something with a lawyer licensed in that jurisdiction, you know, that could give you some protection. But it wouldn't be, it's not as settled as these end of life documents.
It's better to find a provider that you trust than to, I mean, that's the best bet.
Right. Miss Betty, did you find the link to the pink form? No.
I did not.
Okay. So I'm going to share the screen again and just show you where it is on the website, but I'm also happy to paste the link. Okay, can you see my screen now? Okay, so this is the whole big long list of resources. 5 wishes are at the top, addendum, end of life, go wish, and then this whole huge section of disposition of body, which we're going to do quite soon, the durable power of attorney. And then there's these specific medical orders. And I guess I'm going to list this order form because I think this is the better way to do it, even though you got to get something shipped to you, because otherwise you're not going to have it on that pink stuff, on that pink paper. So here is the link, at least for North Carolina. You'll have to do some research if you're not in North Carolina. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, Lyndon, thank you. The health disparities between white and Black women in birth and illness and death. Yeah, big stuff. It's the stress of racism is adds to, you know, the mortality. Okay, how are people feeling right now? Do you want some time with your buddy to look at the checklist and make dates and get a little bit centered about what you want to accomplish by when? I'm seeing nods. Is that right? Okay. Yeah, it's a lot. Okay, so give me a minute and I'm gonna
I'm gonna
organize.
I'm gonna sit this one out. I'm gonna actually take a little bike ride. I'm a little restless sitting on Zoom this long, so I'm gonna
Okay,
take a bike ride. And are we gonna have a break too
Yeah.
after that?
we're gonna have a break too after that.
Okay, so what's a reasonable time to come back for the next section?
Well, we're probably gonna do a little bit of something before we take a break. So if you want to catch that piece, that would probably be in, 10, 12 minutes. And if you wanted to skip that piece and come back, probably 4:10, 4:15, something like that.
Okay, I think I'll do that so I can get a decent ride, and it's
Okay.
nice today too. Okay,
See you
thank
soon,
you.
Kelly. Yep.
Thanks. Should I just log back in or should I just leave it on?
Either way.
Okay,
Okay, so I'm doing Leslie and Judy are in their own room. I'm gonna talk this through to make sure I do it right. Ellie and Sally are in a room. Okay, John and Owner are in a room. Okay, and Cynthia and Miss Betty are in a room. And Carmen and Kenzie are in a room. And Lyndon and Nance are in a room. Did I get all that right? Okay, how many minutes do y'all want? 10? Less than 10? More than 10?
10 is
10.
good for me. 10.
Okay, so you're gonna get your checklist out. You're gonna talk about everything we've already talked about today. You're gonna put any other tasks you wanna do, ideally put specific dates down, and then ask your buddy for the kind of, the specific kind of support you need. Like, hey, I wanna hop on the phone, and get clear about this. Hey, I want you to hold me accountable to this date. Hey, I need you to a reminder. Yeah, good? Okay. See y'all soon. Welcome back. How, anybody want to check in? Anybody that's not checked in yet, I want to prioritize. Kenzie and Carmen, and who else has not checked in? I'm not fully tracking. Maybe Leslie. Any of you all want to check in?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I'll just share one of the things that we were kind of talking about is like community and not really having solid health providers, and like, how do you kind of find a health provider who you trust, who you can get to know. Yeah, also just feeling like, there weren't a ton of options for people we would trust to be like the, what do you call it? The
Healthcare agent.
healthcare agent. And yeah, just kind of like emotions of people who we would talk to about this. And yeah, just kind of figuring out like you know, how to have those conversations and stuff.
Yeah, figuring out how to have those conversations and determining whether this person is going to be able to honor your wishes or have the characteristics you need for carrying out what you want. Yeah, I hear that. It's a big deal. Thank you. Kenzie.
So I was telling Carmen that I ended up having a pretty challenging time sharing some of this information with my partner. And just the heat of the moment, like he was on his way home and he was asking me how my class went, and I was really excited, and I was also kind of like really overwhelmed, and just I think it just kind of came out in that moment that like he wasn't, I didn't say it like this, but I was more like, I chose our best friend Kara to be my primary healthcare agent, and he took it super personal. And then I was like, oh man, I should have waited for him to get home. Like, this isn't a conversation I should be having over the phone with him right now. And it was really challenging. And we were able to kind of squash it, and he was able to have more compassion. But it was this thing where like his ego was a little bit offended that like, well, why wouldn't you pick me? Like, I'm closest to you. Like, why would you pick this other person? And so for me, I'm just like, okay, well, maybe in the future, like it might be important for me to have those conversations in person with people so that they can read body language and we can move through those difficult feelings together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful. I love how you had that experience and repaired it, and also learned this piece about how tender this conversation can be. And I also think, you know, if you took a screenshot or you wrote down some of the characteristics of the healthcare agent, it could be helpful to give someone some background, like, you know, hey, these are the characteristics, and what I'm learning in the class is that sometimes it's good to have a primary partner and sometimes it's not. Like, you know, this was my thinking. What is your thinking when you think about this? Sort of like Lyndon was, you know, talking about checking in with her children. Like, does one of you actually want this, you know, sort of heavy duty, you know, bad guy role? You know, the strong arm with the institutions, or does, you know, or not? So yeah, beautiful, Kenzie. Thank you. And it sounds hard, and it sounds like you also recovered. Other shares, other thoughts? I don't think John's checked in. I don't think Leslie's checked in. Either one of you want to check in?
I took a moment to unmute. I really don't have anything to say that would add anything. That's why I haven't checked in.
Okay, thank you. Huh. All right, let's take a break. I think if we come back at 4:15, that's a 20-minute break. Does that feel like enough? Get hydrated, get fed, get rested, get away from the screen. Okay, great. Yeah, you all can stay logged in because the technology is working well today if you want to, or you can come back either way, but just so you can mute yourself, maybe you can turn your video off, and we'll see you soon. All right, folks are slowly coming back. We have such little precious time together. It's so good. You know, I often think like we could do this class over 3 or 4 weeks, but it's hard. It's a hard sell Like people wouldn't really sign up for it. I mean, now that you're in it, you'd probably do it, but signing up for it is a little harder.
That's probably true, especially at the holiday time, Lee.
Yeah, for sure.
In fact, this is a little bit of an odd conjunction. It's good with winter to be going on this inward journey, but then here we have all this festivity atmosphere around, so. But that's okay. Death can have festivities too.
Yeah.
I think it's good for Advent, it's a spiritual preparation time.
Yeah. The solstice is the dark.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think of, being with family, it's just an opportunity to bring the subject up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Lyndon, would you read this quote?
Yes. Death is just a change of clothing. The Bhagavad, I don't know how to say that.
The Bhagavad Gita.
Yes, thank you.
The Bhagavad Gita. Death is just a change of clothing. Welcome back. So we're going to go into a bit of a section here on the choices for your body. And I think you probably printed out or have access to the declaration for disposition, which we're going to cover, but I want to talk a little bit about the choices first. And all of this stuff is also on my website. I just realized the Carolina Memorial Sanctuary link isn't working, so I'm going to have to fix that. If something else isn't working, let me know. But we're going to go a little bit through this. There's burial, there's cremation, there's composting, there's all kinds of creative stuff that's emerging. People are so creative. But let's start with traditional burial. And, I have a little bit of a bias against this, as you'll see, because I have some environmental statistics here. Every year, 55.3 million people die worldwide, according to the World Health Organization. And in the US, the chemicals and materials buried along with the body include about 300 million board feet of hardwood, almost 3,000 tons of copper and bronze, over 100,000 tons of steel, 1.5 million tons of reinforced concrete, and about 800,000 gallons of embalming fluid. And cremation isn't a whole lot better. Here comes Kelly. Great. Cremation releases more than 500,000 tons of greenhouse gases annually. And mercury emissions, right? Because we go in with our mercury amalgams. Some of us have those. More than half of the people who die in the US each year are cremated. So it's sort of a big business these days. And that process emits more than 500 pounds of carbon dioxide per body. So just some statistics there. There's lots of alternatives. One of my favorite places, and this is some photos from their website, is the Carolina Memorial Sanctuary in Mills River. And it's created by Caroline Young, who's one of the mentors I mentioned earlier that runs the Center for End of Life Transitions. It's in North Carolina. There are conservation burial agencies, coalitions, alliances all across the country. There's not that many that have sanctuaries. We're super lucky to have one this close to us. But if you do a Google search for conservation burial or green burial, there might be an alliance in your state. And if there's not one near you, you might, I don't know, consider proposing it or consider starting a little nonprofit or a business. They're really awesome. They keep the land in pretty minimal, like there's very minimal gravestones, there's minimal markers, they have sort of GPS markers for where the bodies are, they have really strict requirements for what you can put in the ground. like no caskets, no embalming fluid, basically a pine box or a shroud if you're doing burial, and then the kind of containers you can use for cremation. So, and there, it's a beautiful, beautiful sanctuary. You can take walks there, hikes through the woods. It's just incredible. And they maintain it in a pretty wild way. So it's fun. It's a fun place to visit if you haven't been there. Carolina Memorial Sanctuary, for those of you who are local. There's all kinds of fun things going on. This is on my website too, Recompose. There's an article. They're in Washington State, I believe, and they do body composting. So, you know, the prices of these things vary. Like, I think probably a traditional burial is, I don't know, in the $6,000 range. I'm totally ballparking here. Carolina Memorial Sanctuary, if you get a plot there, it's about $4,000. If you compost your body, which means you'd have to send it to their facility, I don't know what the cost of that is, but the composting process is about $5,500, and then your family gets sent back a bunch of soil that is from your body. There's this really interesting infinity burial suit. I think there might be a TED talk on this where she's like in the suit and she's talking about it. And it has all these fungus spores in the suit. So as the body decomposes, it gets like filled with all these spores and decomposes faster and sort of creates all of this fungal activity in the soil, which is sort of fun. There's these people, this egg capsule, Capsula Mundi. I think these are European folks. And they have proposed this like pod that you put a body in and bury it, and then you put a tree on top of it. And the way the tree's roots grow, it's like really getting access to the body and the nutrients from the body. And so the tree becomes the person kind of thing. It's like this, you know, this process. So that's kind of cool. They have a whole thing about that. This aquamation process, somebody sent me this article. I don't know much about it, but it's like an alkalinization. Am I saying that right? An alkaline process of cremation. It's not using fire, it's using alkaline substance. I think of like lye or something, like maybe it's decomposing the body in a slightly different way. So that's an option. I don't know the cost of that. There's a series of body farms at universities across the country. University of Tennessee. We actually have one here in Western North Carolina, Western Carolina University, Texas State University, Houston State, Southern Illinois, Colorado. There's a list of them. Somebody needs to be muted here. Okay. And they take bodies and they do these crazy, like you can see this photo, there's just like a body laying on the ground. They do all kinds of experiments with like putting bodies on the surface, putting bodies 1 inch down, 6 inches down, 6 feet down, 3 feet down, up in a tree, over here. And like they do all this research of like how, in what contexts do bodies decompose and how do they decompose? So I have no idea how this caught on and how this is at universities, but you could donate your body to the body farm and they would research how it did its process. And apparently they're very tender and sensitive. Like they collect the bones, they give them back to the family, they facilitate the burial process. Like yeah, fascinating. Donation to science is a thing, right? If you want to give your body to local university, there are companies that broker that thing and you can sign up ahead of time. I think you have to qualify. I don't know exactly what the application process is like. And you may or may not be able to have the body at the funeral, right? So you'd have to look into that. Like, what are the requirements to donate your body? And then the one that I love so much, and I'm going to share my stories with you, is the home funeral, home burial projects. And you can look at, there's a web link on the website of the Home Funeral Alliance. You can bury at home in all 50 states. with certain requirements and restrictions, so many feet from a building, so many feet from a water source, etc. But it's more accessible than you think. And so here there's lots of options. You may know right off the bat what you want, or you may want to research some of these. I love how creative people are getting around this topic. Little bit of my story. I have a few slides about Kimchi's death and other deaths. I think I told you last week that we had 5 deaths. We actually had 6 deaths over the course of a 2-year period from 2016 to 2018. And in 3 cases, folks died at home. And in all 5 of the cases, folks were buried at home and had funerals at home. One of the cases we weren't that involved in because it sort of happened in a small family and we weren't engaged, but the rest of them, many of us were engaged in the process. In 2 cases, we went to the morgue, or we went to the hospital and got the bodies. Like, we had our mentors come with us and, knocked on the morgue door and said, I'll take that body. And they were quite astounded and surprised because people don't usually do that. But our mentors knew our rights and the laws, and we were able to get the body and put it in our car and take it home. So that is fascinating. If you have someone in your region who advocates for that, it might be worthwhile to get to know them. For us in this region, it's the Center of End of Life Transitions does some of that. And yeah, the idea of needing to be a funeral director, often the morgue will say, are you a funeral director? I can only release to the funeral director. And apparently that's not actually true. You can actually release to family members. But, it's like anything we do alternatively, we have to sort of educate the people we're engaging with. And it's good to be educated ourselves. So this is a picture of the death care team guided by Ruth from the Center of End of Life Transitions. And we were tending to the body of Kimchi. And she died the night before around 8 p.m. We put her on dry ice and in a cold room. It was February, so we just opened the windows. And the next day we got together and we spent about 5 hours washing her body, telling stories about her life, talking to her. Her sister was there, and so she knew a lot of the stories we didn't know from her childhood and from her earlier life before she had moved to our community. We sang to her. We told her how much we loved her. We told her what was happening. Being with each other, supporting this whole process of transition for her and for us. Our mentors are Buddhists, and so they believe that the spirit stays with the body for 72 hours, for 3 full days. And many traditions believe that. I believe the Jewish tradition believes that. Other land-based or traditional peoples believe that the spirit is with the body. So that's what the telling of the story and the singing and the sharing was both for this being that just passed as well as for us. And it's one of the most beautiful rituals I've ever been a part of. Also, this idea that oxytocin is a love hormone and it creates bonding. It's a bonding hormone, and it happens in really high amounts at certain times in life. It happens during birth, and not only for the mama and the baby, but for everyone in the room and everyone involved. Everybody gets a big oxytocin boost. And it happens also during death, like leading up to death and death. And again, for everybody who's involved in sort of concentric circles, like even people who are not in the room, but who are supporting the process. So the closer we were to this inner circle and inner process, the more bonded we got. Like death was, and that's part of why I say death is a gift, because it's such a gift for the living. And I'm hoping and assuming it's also a big gift for the dying, but for sure, for those of us who were close to that process, it was just an immense gift. And ceremony, in this case, ceremony is also a bonding component. I think as we get conscious about these rituals or ceremonies that sort of speak to our soul and to the transition, and to the relationship between the living and the dying or the dead. I think that feeds the collective of how we want to do this more consciously. We had been trained by Soban Fusome in setting up these altars. And so we set up a grief altar with the body where it was available for 3 full days in our community space. Anyone could come, there were visiting hours, but she was never left alone. Someone spent the night, someone always stayed. And there was a refreshing of the candles and a refreshing of the flowers and a refreshing of the dry ice. And so there was a lot of tending, sort of like old school tending of the dead, which is part of the process for us. In that same room, so this is the grief altar with the body, the candles, the flowers. This is another one of our beloved dead, Patricia Allison, who died during that 2-year period of time. The first one was Kimchi, who you have seen the Facebook page. This is a mother and a child in our community sort of kneeling in front of, this is actually Chuck Marsh. And from my perspective, having children be part of death and the death process it's a normalization of death, and it educates about the cycles of life, and it encourages our love and our relationship for the dead to continue, right? I know as a child, I wasn't allowed to go to things, and that was always a big mystery, and there was a lot of confusion and hush hush, and everybody dressed in black. And, you know, depending on the circumstances, I think that it's not across the board, but I think children, depending on the age, can handle it and are interested and curious. And I love that children in our community are growing up in the death positive culture. So the 3 days happen. There's also this forgiveness altar. So in the public space is the grief altar with the body, and then a forgiveness altar where people could go and sit and ask for forgiveness or offer forgiveness. It's just this process, sort of death brings up this process. So that's an opportunity. And then there's an ancestor altar where the photos of the ancestors of the beloved dead are there. We could bring our own ancestor photos. It's an opportunity to honor all those who've passed. And in our community, we do the grave digging by hand. This is mostly a task that the men do, but sometimes women help. And often it's gendered. It's a little gendered, where the women are caretaking the food and the body, and the men have been caretaking the grave and the logistics, but it doesn't have to be that way. It just sort of turned out to be that way in our culture, in our community. Making the pine box, or in a lot of cases, in the 5 deaths, those 2 years, I believe we only used shrouds. We never used a box. And this is another grave side. There's an opportunity. I think digging the grave is an opportunity for people to come together, in this case, men, and the way that men in particular relate and communicate, to talk about and process the death and life and the preciousness of life and what happens. These are opportunities to come together again and again. Death is, again, it just gives us that gift. This is a big gathering at one of the funerals of someone who was really popular. I think this was either Kimchi's death or Chuck's death, and a big circle in our common space there. For Kimchi's death, those of us, we put a bunch of her belongings outside, and she dressed really flamboyantly in lots of bright colors. And so we all sort of took her clothes and put them on. So this was the funeral. We were all dressed in this Kimchi garb. This is the shroud, where we covered the body and then wrapped it and then put a bunch of flowers on it and wove them into the shroud on the top. And then we have a canvas carrying tote that we use that, you can get, 4 or 5 people on each side. So even people who aren't as strong as like the 6 big male pallbearers, like women can carry this, and we reuse the tote. We don't put the tote in the burial site. We take it out and we use it. And this is a picture of a bunch of folks carrying the tote with the body inside, that's wrapped in the shroud with the flowers all on top. This is the body. This is Kimchi's body by the grave site. It's on the tote right now, but then there's ways we can move the body and get the tote out. And then we have these beautiful strips of fabric that people have lowered the body down, hand woven things. This is another body by the grave side. That's beautiful, really, with these bright colors and all these flowers. And this is a bigger, more zoomed out shot with lots of people sitting around. You can see the grave there, and then the body next to it with the shroud. This is lowering the body into the grave. And let me see here. I have a little video, if I can play it. Let me see if I can do it. This is a little video at the end of Kimchi's funeral, and it was her birthday. She was born on February 20th and she died on February 16th. So when we did the 3 days of lying in state, it ended up being that her funeral was on her birthday. So we had a ceremony, and this is at the very end of it, where young folks were putting some of the soil back on top of her body, and there was a musician, our friend Kaylin, playing fiddle there. So let me see if I can play this and you can hear it. Oops. And here is the grave that was finally filled in, and the dirt gets really mounded up because there's lots of air in it, and then it was all decorated with flowers, and later a tree was planted. Yeah, so let's stop there. That's a lot. What are your thoughts and feelings about those different ways of disposing of the body, caring for the body, and also any of that story? Any thoughts about any of that? Nance.
I just really appreciate understanding the way that it's being handled in more creative ways. When I was reading through 5 Wishes last week, I said, don't have a home, don't have a land, this more relational process is just appealing to me. And at that time, I thought, I don't have any alternatives but cremation. But this just opens it all up. It invites me into learning a lot more about this journey that I did not know about. So thank you again, Lee.
Yeah, a lot of options I'm hearing. There's just so much creativity. And yeah, I think one of the beautiful things about the conservation burial too is that if you live in an area and there is one, you're preserving land in that area, so that is worth investing in if that's something you're interested in. Who else? Anyone else want to share?
I wanted to say that I really, really appreciate the stuff you said at the beginning about all the amount of timber and steel and chemicals that get buried, because I hadn't thought about that, but there must have been some inkling of that, because I've always thought that getting buried was something that was kind of a stupid idea, and just there was something wrong about that. But I wasn't really comfortable with cremation or anything else. Now, I feel a lot more comfortable with the idea of being buried, but in a much more naturalistic way. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, what are the options, and the least of all of the bad options, right? But these days there's so many really creative and even fun options. Judy.
I just, where we live, there's a conservation sanctuary that sounds similar to what you have near you. And one of the things I know when I've seen, like, I don't like the way burial happens at conventional cemeteries with all the materials. I like having a place where it's easy to find a grave and there's a gravestone so people can go back and visit and just get a little, like, whether they're loved ones or strangers, can get a little clue about someone's life. And I wish there were a conservation sanctuary that had the low material use and wilder aspect, yet with more gravestones, just to make it easy, because GPS is in my experience, is kind of a pain in the butt to use. And, like,
yeah, they allow like a small thing with like the name and the dates or something. So you can have a marker, but they don't have like big gravestone markers. But I mean, it's an interesting piece, which is like part of the fun of cemeteries is the history, right? And and being able to see that history. So maybe there is somebody doing some kind of hybrid. That's a good idea. Sally, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to say how much I love the way these alternative burials are relating to the earth so differently from the traditional burial, and that feels so much better to let someone go in that way, or to know that I'm going in that way back to the earth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Yeah, when you hear about old-timey family cemeteries, right, or community cemeteries where people on this street got buried here, or people in this community, or this is a family cemetery, and you can imagine the richness in that context. And so what does it look like to do something like that too? I'm curious if there's any activism going on around that. I'm guessing there is somewhere. Anybody else? Okay, so let's move to paperwork for this. Good old paperwork. There are forms, and the one that I really like that was created by my mentors, the Center of End of Life Transitions. We're just going to spend a little bit of time with it. It's called the Declaration, somewhere here, the Declaration for Disposition of the Physical Body. I also want to talk to you a little bit about the death certificate, and then there's possible others, authorization for cremation if you want that. If you can buy ahead a cremation spot and then get a receipt. And if you have a receipt, tell somebody about it or put it in your forms. Organ donation, if you want to do that. I think it's a little bit mutually exclusive from a home funeral, because they probably have to take the body right away. They probably have to attend to the organs right away, and they have to, sew it up in a way. So it's not really conducive for home funeral stuff. But maybe it's been done. It'd be interesting to see if anybody online or out there has thoughts about that. And body donation too, I think, is maybe mutually exclusive with home burial, but I don't know. It's worth exploring. So do folks have the declaration regarding the disposition of physical body in front of them? Have that piece of paper? Okay, great. I want to If I have it right here too. Okay. So I think I saw you nod, Nance. Would you read the top part all the way through the first and second points?
To the first and second.
Yeah.
All righty. I, after thoughtful deliberation, being of sound mind and more than 21 years of age, in exercise of my paramount right to direct the manner of the disposal of my physical body after my death, and in order to state clearly my direction, do willfully and voluntarily make this declaration, and do hereby declare. First, autopsy is a violation of my spiritual convictions and religious beliefs, and therefore no autopsy shall be performed upon my physical body under any circumstances. Second, after death has taken place, my physical body shall not be embalmed or in any way artificially preserved, except by means of refrigeration, air conditioning, ice, or dry ice.
Great. Let me stop here and say that this form is not for everybody. It's a very alternative form, as if you wanted to do the sort of things that we did. And I wanted to include it and read it because if you do want that, it's one of those things where you have to be clear about it and state it clearly. And you can edit this, take it and edit it and make it your own. Who else has the form pulled up that's willing to read? Cynthia, please go ahead and read the third and fourth and fifth.
For the period of 72 hours after death has taken place, I request that so-and-so take custody of my body, acting as my death care agent, and exercise their right to care for and dispose of my body. If this person is not available for this, then I request that friends or my religious group be allowed to care for and dispose of my body. If this is not possible because of the laws of the state, I request that my friends, family, and acquaintances have access to the presence of my physical body in order to take part in prayer, read spiritual literature, and perform any practices associated with the care of the body after death. I request that these activities in my funeral arrangements be supported by so-and-so. Fourth, I request that my friends, family, and religious group make the following funeral service arrangements. How far was I supposed to go? Fifth?
Yeah.
Fifth, no fewer than 72 hours after my death, my physical body shall be buried or cremated, and my remains disposed of as follows.
Okay, great. Somebody else wanting to read? Ellie, can you read the sixth and seventh?
Yep. The directions herein expressed are based upon my deeply held philosophical conviction, religious belief, and spiritual practice. I hereby request blank to guide and support my family and friends as necessary in the fulfillment of these directions. Seventh, I have made firm and settled commitment, while competent, to express the directions stated herein, which are of great importance to me. I request that my directions as herein expressed be given precedence and controlling force over all other interests by any judge or court or other public authority. I request that my relatives and friends respect the directions expressed herein. Eighth, this declaration shall remain in effect indefinitely unless I revoke it.
Awesome. And then 9 says, I understand the full import of this declaration. I am emotionally, mentally competent to execute. And then it has the signature area, the witness, and the notary. And again, I imagine that this is partially in existence because there are family members who have disputed what their deceased have wanted. It's hard to imagine that, but I think, if some family members feel strongly about burial and and the deceased wanted cremation or vice versa, that having these forms like, no, this is really what I wanted, is there, because maybe there's confusion or concern. So this is for you to use if you want to use it or adapt it or amend it, depending on what you want. But it does seem like maybe making a note on your checklist about deciding what you want and putting it in some written form. I mean, there's a space, a little bit of a space to put it in the 5 wishes towards the end, you know, towards wish 5, or in the addendum, or using this form or something like it. There's also the cremation form and other forms on my website, which you can use. And you might need to contemplate this for a while before you decide which form you want to use, and figure out, you know, what feels right to you. What is the process? Do you have a spiritual religious tradition? Do you want to check with them? Do you have a family tradition? Do you have a, you know, some research that you want to do? Do you want to explore some of the things we talked about today? Okay, the other piece is the death certificate, which I learned about the hard way. It's this, I don't know if any of you have seen a death certificate. It's this, in North Carolina anyway, it's this sort of official looking green document. I also have it on the screen there in the PowerPoint. And it starts off as just a regular old form. And when the person dies, you know, the coroner can come and sign it, or if the person is in the care of hospice, they can come and, you know, they listen to the person's heart, they listen to the pulse, they make sure they're dead, they sign the death certificate. And then one of the things that I realized, and was really grateful to have Kim Chi's sister there, is there's some questions on the death certificate that I wouldn't have been able to answer as Kim Chi's friend, like her social security number. I mean, I happened to have her documents, but if I didn't, someone's not muted here. Nance, let's mute you. Let's see, it also asks for the deceased's father's name and mother's name, which I wouldn't have known. It asks for date of birth. Cynthia, you're also not muted. It asks for date of birth. And so I actually filled out my death certificate with my name, my social security number, my mother's name, my father's name, all the pertinent information, so that if I'm surrounded by friends who don't know how to get that information or are confused about that information, that it's done for them. So, and then what I did is I brought this, in this case, to Rutherford County, and it's signed by the medical person, and then you bring it into the county, Buncombe County, wherever county you're in whatever state, and they shrink it down and they put this fancy paper in the copier and they make a bunch of copies, and then you buy those copies back, and then you can send those copies wherever you need to send them to tie up affairs, financial affairs, generally speaking, but sometimes other things, like maybe you'd need it to prove your permit for burial or something or other. So that's that. I have a copy of the North Carolina death certificate, which wasn't easy to find actually on my website, but you might try your county or your state or look online if you want to get one of those, or it's possible you just have your pertinent information written on a piece of paper and it's in your document. Okay. Just take a breath with me. This is a lot of stuff we're going through. You all are doing great. Dee, would you read this quote by Joan Baez?
You don't get to choose how you're going to die or when. You can only decide how you're going to live now.
Awesome. Okay, any other thoughts? We're about to go into a financial overview. We have about an hour left, and so we can either take a little time to process more now, or go right into finances and process a little bit more after. What are you all needing right now?
I'm okay with moving on to financial stuff.
I'm seeing nods. Okay, great. All right, it's the last push. Okay, so finances. So, lawyers are whatever, $200 to $500 an hour. This is your $20 an hour advice. That's not really advice. I am not qualified to give this advice in any way, shape, or form. I am not a lawyer. I am not an accountant. But I can give you some big picture themes and ideas for you to take some next steps about. So here's a little chart, and it has 4 little sections, and it's basically this beneficiary, TOD and POD, and then the will. We'll talk about that. So beneficiary is a word that people commonly use to refer to who gets this thing when I die, this asset. The technical term beneficiary applies to IRAs, life insurance, annuities, and retirement plans. And as long as you have in your institution a beneficiary assigned, there's no need for probate. You send them somebody sends them the death certificate. They're like, oh, okay, this is the owner of this annuity died. This person has John Smith listed as their beneficiary. We're going to send this, right, we're going to turn it right over to John Smith, Jane Smith, whatever. So here's the glitch about beneficiaries. If you didn't specify who your beneficiary is when you opened the account, they may not have asked you. Generally speaking, they don't. So one of the things that you can do if you have assets in these forms, in any form, is to, like I have, just some basic checking account and savings account. I don't have any of this other stuff, but I went to the bank and I was like, do you have a beneficiary listed for my checking or my savings account? And they're like, no, we don't ask. You have to tell us. So that's just a heads up. Transfer on death and payable on death are similar to beneficiaries. They just apply slightly differently to different accounts. What the transfer on death is the non-retirement investment accounts. The payable on death is what we're used to, many of us have a checking or savings, a money market. They also sometimes call that beneficiary. And so the assignee generally becomes the owner. It transfers on death or is payable on death. It's usually settled within 72 hours. It doesn't need to go through probate. So I'm giving you general rules. It might be different from state to state. It might be different from institution to institution. So if I were in a situation where I had assets, I would put on my checklist to check with each and every one of them about who is listed and about what their process is, so you can get clear and get whoever you want listed. One of the really hard things that happened in one of the cases that in our community is that someone had their ex-spouse listed as a beneficiary on their insurance, and they got a big chunk of money, and they were really estranged, really bad blood, bad feelings with this ex-spouse, and then the ex-spouse ended up suing for more of the estate. So it was a big mess. And there's nothing that will be, remove us from the sacred process of dying, death, and grieving than having to deal with all this big, mucky mess, financial mess. Okay. there is a class through the Osher Lifelong Learning. The Osher Lifelong Learning in our case is through the University of North Carolina, Asheville, but I think Osher Lifelong Learning is across the country, and it's like education for people 55 and older. And I do remember seeing a class that looked really good about financial end of life stuff. So I would recommend, looking online if there's specifically a class with a lawyer or an accountant that can go into much more detail about this. Okay, the will. If you have an estate, which means real property, house, other property like a car, other things, belongings, it's ideal to have a will, and it's ideal to have a lawyer draw up that will. There are templates online that you can get and download, but I'm always like, ooh, if this is of importance to you, get a lawyer to review it. It's hard to find a lawyer. Talking about this with a friend who also took this class, it's hard to find a lawyer who is willing to be paid by the hour to review your already created documents. What they like to do is charge you, $2,500 to make all the documents from scratch for you. And so I just got the name of a lawyer that's here in the Asheville area, which if anybody wants it, just ping me, hit me up with an email and I can try to get it from my friend. Who's willing to work by the hour and review the documents she already has, which seems like a more empowering approach, especially because we're doing all this to think about. But the will might be one of those things where you say, like, can you start me off with a template, and or I'll give you a list of my assets or whatever it is. Trusts are something that people who have maybe more assets or trusts are a whole different beast legally. It is not probated. So a will, or a lot of, if someone didn't have a will, for example, but had children, say they were unmarried, but had children and didn't have a will, everything belongs to those children, but it needs to go through a probate process, which means it's reviewed by, the county and like, okay, does this all look right? Yes, these things are going to the children. If you have a will, it often also goes through probate, but a trust, which is more of an ironclad sort of standalone document, and those of you who are legal backgrounds might be able to explain it better than me. It's like it has an executor and it's a closed document and it doesn't go through probate, and whatever's written in there is sort of law. It's like pretty solid. So if you decide you want to go for creating a trust, that's a more expensive process, but more ironclad. Thoughts, questions about any of that? Super high level overview. It's really meant to get y'all to take initiative outside of this class to do what you need to do around the finances. Any thoughts about that? Anything you want to offer, Lyndon, from a legal perspective?
No, I think you covered it. I mean, I think most states do have, as far as I know, do have provisions for people to make their own wills. And I see Cynthia's put on, the NOLO Press is a good resource. So, I think there are ways to do that, and ways to do that so that it will be self-proof. It's called self-proving. But again, that's going to be determined by state law. And I think you're probably right that it's better to try to get some legal advice, even if you're going to do that.
Right.
You could, in most cases, you can pay a lawyer for a consultation fee.
Right.
You could go in and buy an hour of their time and talk with them, take your list of assets and stuff and go in and pick their brains. And actually, it would be best to do the research about what the requirements are and what a template might look like, and take it all in. And they're gonna make you sign stuff for probably as disclaimer, that they haven't prepared it and all of that. But if you have any assets where you feel a little that it's complicated, I agree with you that it's really better to go to pay that and go to a lawyer.
Right. If you don't have any assets, another creative way to do this which is what Kimchi did, because she didn't really have real property, and she had a car, she had some belongings, is that she found someone she trusts. In this case, it was me, and she made me a joint right of survivor. Like she put me on her checking account, she put me on her savings account as a co-owner. So like there's what's called joint right of survivorship, meaning if one person in that co-account holder dies, the other person is the owner by default. So that's another way. She also signed the title of her car over, and she had this sort of like undeeded house that she made private arrangements with. This is in our village, and it was just like a funky situation. And so nothing needed to be probated because she had lived such a sort of simple, close to the bone life. So that's another way to do it.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, I've done that with my just my regular checking accounts, my regular bank accounts. You can have beneficiaries on record, so that.
Well, beneficiary is different from joint right of survivorship. Beneficiary is like you make sure that when you die, it goes to someone, but the joint right of survivorship is like I'm actually an account holder on the account. So
right.
It's slightly different.
Right. So when she was alive, theoretically you had access.
Yes.
To all of those things. Whereas
right.
A beneficiary doesn't have access until you're dead.
Exactly right. And that brings us to another topic, which is the financial power of attorney. And the financial power of attorney is something to consider, because if you're unable to make decisions for yourself and you're still alive, you've assigned a healthcare agent, or you will be assigning a healthcare agent through the 5 wishes, but who's got access to your money to help make those decisions happen? Right? If nobody has access to your money, that's another big headache. So there's a document for North Carolina, sorry, out-of-state folks, you can hopefully do a Google search and just search for durable or financial power of attorney. And this is a legal form that gives someone in your life, and that could be your healthcare agent or not, could be someone else, that gives someone power to access your funds should they be needed for your care while you're still alive. Is that clear? The difference between healthcare power of attorney who's making these healthcare decisions, medical decisions for you, and a financial power of attorney, different things. They could be the same person, they could be different people. I'm going to put this link in the chat box. It is, a pretty hefty looking legal document, but you name the person or your first choice, second choice, third choice, and then you get it signed. It's like a standard thing, like it's recognized. So for example, if I'm in the hospital, I've had an accident, I'm not conscious, I'm at least stable for the moment, there's not a big health decision to be made, but I'm needing to be cared for, and it's going to cost money, or they're going to need money for whatever next thing. My financial power of attorney can go to the bank and say, Lee's in the hospital, she's not able to make money, I am the financial power of attorney, I need to get access to this account. Yeah. Okay. Can look into that.
I want to interject something. Everybody should keep in mind that when you give somebody durable power of attorney, they can pretty much do whatever they want with your money, so you have to trust them. They can't be constrained to only purchase medical services, for example. Just something to keep in mind.
And yeah, I mean, I'm curious, like, in what context do they have access to your money? Like, do you all know, do they have to prove that you're incapacitated somehow? Do you know the answer to that, Lyndon?
Yeah, so it says in the document,
Okay.
you know, what the circumstances are in which it's has authority. So, I mean, you know, theoretically, you could build in circumstances under which, you know, it's viable.
Yeah. But I think the point is well taken, John, that, you know, in both cases, right, you want to have considerations for trusting people, like the healthcare attorney, like the healthcare agent and the financial agent, you want to be able to trust them. Okay, what are you all thinking of? What do you think about another breakout? It can either be with your buddy or not, to talk a little more about these two things, what you think you might want to do with your body and what you think you might want to do around money, assets, beneficiaries. Yes? Are you feeling like you want it to be with your buddy?
Yes.
Okay. Is that a yes for others?
I think I want to talk to my husband. He's here now, so.
Awesome.
He's done this with me, so.
Okay. I still think I have the breakout rooms set for buddies, and so I don't know where you're going to end up, Kelly, because I don't have you on
Well,
this
you can just leave
list.
me in the main room and I can
Okay,
just,
I'll leave
yeah.
you in the main room. How
Okay.
much time do y'all think you need? 10 minutes again?
Yeah.
Okay. See you back on the other side.
Where's Sally?
Ellie, you ended up staying in the same room, so I'm gonna assign you, where are you supposed to be? With Sally? Room
Sally?
2. Okay, there you go. All right, welcome back. How are people feeling on their checklist? Pretty good. Got some dates filled in, got some tasks filled in, got some requests from your buddy to follow back up. Good. Great. Yeah, it's good to set timelines just because, you know, human nature.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a process where I'm sorry. Do you have a process where we can, after we all meet with our buddies, at some point connect and maybe share what we've done? Because I'm sure that some of the things that that Cynthia and I discussed, some of the others of you will have additional things so that we can.
You know, it's a great idea. I wonder if I could set a date for all the past classes and just say, we're going to do a check-in, you know, and where are you with this paperwork? It's an interesting idea, you know, just put aside 2 hours. Everybody comes together that's ever done the class, and then we can do breakouts. We could do group check-in. That's an interesting idea. Yeah, I'll consider that. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I want to save some time for us all to get a chance to check out, to hear everybody's voice about where we are. But I do want to just do one last quick topic and take some questions, and then we'll see how much time we have left. And so this very last topic is about creating death community. Where are the places that we can explore death? Where are the places we can come to consciously talk about what we want? Where can we talk about grief? And so I wanted to brainstorm some ways to create that. One of the notes I had here was to get together a group to watch Harold and Maude. Have you all seen that movie, Harold and Maude? And like, she's dying. She's this older woman. She has this affair with this young guy. It's funny. It's got this cult following. And there's, real talk about death. And it's a sort of a fun way to like bring people together. Or other movies like that, like movies that have death themes that might be fun or serious, like depending on the crowd. You could watch Grief Walker. There's some brainstorms here. Faith communities are pretty good about death because it's like where people go around death, right? Support groups and gatherings, attending deaths, rituals and ceremonies. Like I'll show you this picture. We have this ancestor ceremony every year around the Day of the Dead time, which is right after Halloween. And we bring pictures of our beloved dead, and we bring a food that comes from our ancestry, and we talk about usually someone in our family that's died. And so it really deepens community. Really sweet ritual. What else? Ongoing education, a book club, like getting together a book club that can read that book Being Mortal, or Die Wise, or any of these other death related books. I often have talked about a death and dessert party. Like, I don't know, that some of those traditions, I think there's a Jewish tradition where you bury something inside the loaf of bread, and like whoever gets it gets a prize or something. Like you could you could bake a skull or something, glass skull into a dessert, and like who gets the piece of that with the glass skull. Just make it fun and make it approachable. Other thoughts you all have? Death Cafe. Has anybody heard of the Death Cafe? We had a really active one in Asheville before COVID, but it's an opportunity. People come together and you break out into small groups, and there's no agenda and there's no facilitator, and there's just like your small group just talks about death. Just an opportunity to drop into the topic. So look for your death cafes in your area. Salons, like, I don't know, if you're the kind of extroverted person who would host something, I suppose you could just have a salon of like, what are your plans for your death? Curious, like, let's get together and talk. Other thoughts that other people have thoughts about death literate community. Churches might sponsor this workshop, for example. Like if you wanted to bring this to your faith community or your community, like, you get in touch with me and be like, well, what would it look like for you to come and do this in the church? Or, and Betty, Ms. Betty, I'm willing to talk to you about like, how do we tailor this? How do we get a Black facilitator or co-facilitator, and you and I maybe, and tailor this to the Black community, because some things need to get changed and shifted, and the perspective needs to be specific. So yeah. So the thing about taking this class with other people in your community is then you're not alone in creating the death positive, conscious dying community, because you have people who can speak the same language, right? Because as we go through this process, and now we can speak the same language. Nance.
This is beautiful. I was trying to figure out how to write and build a community around death, and there you blasted it open. I can remember so many times where it was only at the funeral that the hatchet got buried. There was resolution of relationships, And this just really opens it up to getting those things out in the air on the front end. And I think this is where I'm headed with my unfinished business in terms of in building community. So I can see it being a healing process for me to be proactive in building community this way in my area. So again, Lee, thank you very much.
Yeah, I love that. You know, what if you had a series of salons and one of the salons could be how to bury the hatchet? Like, and that is a topic for the evening, you know, like, how do I make inroads with my estranged XYZ family member or friend, you know, between now and my death, whenever that is. I love that. Like, that is a rich and robust topic all on its own. So you do that. You could do, you know, a series of salon topics where you could sort of go deeper in some of these nuances. I love that. Sally.
Lee, that makes me think about the forgiveness altar that you showed us. And I'd like to get a little more information about that.
Yeah, I mean, the teaching is from Sobhan Fusome, so you can, you know, go online and see if you can find her essence comes through her recordings. But basically, she taught us how to grieve in community. And you could keep an eye out for grief rituals. Some people are in the Malidoma Somé tradition are doing grief rituals, but there's always 3 altars in the room: the grieving altar, the ancestor altar, and the forgiveness altar. And they're different colors. And the forgiveness altar is an opportunity, sort of like confession in some ways in the Catholic tradition, like, or something in other traditions where you go and you say, like, gosh, I regret this thing. Or I have been harmed by this thing, and I'm coming to this altar to sit with these things, right?
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And you know about the Hawaiian prayer for forgiveness?
I have heard of that.
Hona or something like that.
Yeah, really
that
beautiful.
Might be part of that possibility.
Yeah, that could be another one of salon topics, is like, how do we clean up? You know, I've often thought about teaching a second class to this class with my friend Mary Lane, who actually now lives in Asheville, around how do we prepare internally, you know, more of an internal preparation. And that, you know, topic of forgiveness is this a complex, rich topic?
It is.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Kelly, I saw your hand.
Yeah, what about like a Facebook group for people that have done this class or and that want to continue the dialogue?
That's a great idea. Yeah, as long as I don't have to do a lot to maintain it, because I'm trying to not be on Facebook.
Well, you could recruit one of us maybe to maintain it.
Oh, great idea.
I don't know that I'm volunteering for that, but
awesome.
Lee, could you spell the name of the person that you mentioned about? Nance asked about it.
Yeah,
too.
Sobhan Fusome.
Yes.
Yeah, let me type it in the chat box. There's an accent over the E, and I don't know how to do that on the chat, but I just put the letters there. Sobhan Fusome. And she was married to a man named Malidoma Somé, and they come from the same tribal village, the Dagara tradition in western part of Africa. So Banfu has passed to the ancestor world. Malidoma is still alive. Malidoma still is available and teaches a lot of these things. So it's possible you could find out if he's teaching anything near you. Malidoma just passed? Did someone just say that? This week? Seriously? Holy cow. I amend that. I thought of Malidoma as so vital and alive. It's a little surprising, but that's death for you. Other questions? Kelly, you had a question, but we were going to save for the group. You want to ask it now?
oh yeah, so somebody that can help, somebody that can help you with like for me, I'm afraid of dying alone. So I think in our other class, we mentioned a death doula.
Yeah,
Um,
so I think your question was, I'm single, or I don't have children, I'm married. What if my spouse passes first and I, don't have anybody that I can put on my healthcare agency list? And then, yes, I think death doulas are come in all shapes and sizes. Death doula is like a birth doula, right? They make an arrangement with you to be available for varying kinds of things when you die. And so, like, I know a death doula who's an elder herself, who's an RN, and she has a huge wide range of skills. And so I think it's about interviewing death doulas, finding out who's a death doula in your area, interviewing them and saying, like, listen, I'm looking for someone to do the whole kit and caboodle. I'm looking for the whole list of things, or what do you offer, or what's your comfort areas? Is like, get to know people, interview them, and then sure, I think that's a great possibility. Yeah.
and can I ask who the RN is locally?
Maggie, my friend Maggie, can you send me an email and I will get clear in my brain?
Sure.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. I mean, she's quite an elder. I think she's in her late 70s, so I'm not sure you're going to outlive her, but it might be nice to connect with her and find out like what her range of services is, and then you can clarify what's exciting about that for you and what you might want to look for.
Yeah, thanks.
Other questions? Other comments?
Well, I guess this would fall into the comments. What I'm puzzling about is the intentionality of our culture. I mean, the faith communities covered a lot of the practices and culture, and for many of us, there isn't that group. So, we're doing this on the topic of death. There's other levels to it. So, I guess this just raises the general question for us in our culture, where we're building community, and then what resources there are for that. I mean, death, life, quality of health care, and all of the forums where we're looking for somewhere to have a dialogue. Here we're doing it, a virtual interface and workshop, but for some of this, I guess I can say it seems we have a common question of where do we go and how do we build it, and some of it, it matters where we are locally to know people directly. So appreciate what you're doing, appreciate what those who are paying attention to intentional community are doing, and paying attention to actually encouraging our having a voice in building our culture together. Meeting our needs.
Yeah, beautiful. I mean, a shout out to the people who started Death Cafe. There's a death fair that happens in Eastern North Carolina that was happening every year before COVID, and it got started by a mother who lost her son, her 18-year-old son, and she was like, I'm gonna do a festival, fair, an event where people can table and talk to each other and have this sort of conversation in a sort of festival format about death. And she actually brought Stephen Jenkinson in, who spoke there, and that's some initiative, right? Like, that is wow. Like, her son died. She was like, I want to surround myself with people who can speak about this topic. Death doula trainings exist. I mean, it sort of depends on what kind of person you are. If you have initiative on any level and want to do a small group, medium-sized group, or big group, it's just of great benefit. And I was saying this to Miss Betty, I think last week, which is, I bet if you put it out on, on a social, like, let's say you posted on Facebook, I just took this workshop, I'm interested in conversations about death. Who's with me? I want to gather in person, or I want to gather virtually. Like, I'm curious. I wonder, I bet you'd have people come out of the woodwork that surprise you. Other questions, other comments?
I guess I would just say I am so grateful again. I want to say it again for you and for this, for this 2-part workshop. And I do feel sort of like I'm just getting to the starting line, right, of dealing with all of this. And I also want to say I'm just so impressed to see younger people here who are being so mindful. And I'm going to share electronically and hard copy some of these resources with my adult children, because I think that it is. I want to live mindfully, and I think being mindful of my death is one of the most powerful ways of doing that. So I feel inspired. I'm already thinking about like next. The end of October, the beginning of November, of Halloween and All Saints Days and All Souls Day, and beginning to construct some rituals that I want to share with families and friends around that time. I've been writing madly these notes of everybody's comments and suggestions. So I just feel really inspired and grateful, and just want to say thanks.
Yeah, good. Well, I think you're kicking us off on our checkout. So that was an awesome checkout. That was a great example, just like a minute, because we only have about a minute for each person. So I'm actually going to time it, and then hopefully you'll hear the timer go off at the end of a minute. And if you go on too long, I might mute you. So you can also watch your own clock. And I also might call on you so there's not a long delay between each person. So thank you for checking out, Lyndon, and just, your final thoughts, what's alive for you, what's on your heart, anything you want to say as you check out. So I'm going to start with Dee and John. Go ahead, one of you start, and then hopefully you can hear the timer for the other one.
Okay, I have little to say at this point, except that I loved it. It was very informative. Hooray. And with that, Dee, it's your turn.
I'm very grateful for everyone, and I feel very close to you all in a kind of strange way, even Kinsey's black cat. And I want to plug Earth Haven a little bit for a second, because I'm on the email list, and I noticed that there's more YouTube videos of events and sharing of just being community. And part of being community, from my understanding, is being part of awareness of death in the community. And so I just love Earth Haven. I went there years ago, and I am so glad to see that it's really become this community. Back to Leslie's idea of context and finding source of information. And so it's life and death, Thank you.
Thank you, John and Dee. Kenzie, would you go next?
So I'm feeling very fulfilled and very nourished in being here and sharing space with you all. I feel like it's very needed that we come together and just talk about things that are somewhat taboo in our culture. I'm feeling very inspired to start up my own little community and group and start having events like you were talking about, having like death and dessert parties and like a book club. And I feel like that's feeling very good to me. So I'm very excited and very inspired. So thank you all for being here.
Kelly, would you go next?
Yeah, I joined just the second half, so I'm sure I missed, I'm reviewing, so I know the content, but feeling of missing out on the community for the first section, but I'm glad I could be here for this section and feeling motivated to take action. I've kind of been putting this off, but I recently lost a close friend unexpectedly, and I just realized the importance of planning this out and having things squared away. I don't think he ever planned to die at 52. It's very unexpected. So So I think I feel an urgency to take care of the 5 wishes and get the ball rolling. So thank you for Lee for the inspiration to get back to it.
Thank you.
Clarity. Yeah.
Great. Judy and Leslie, would you go next? All right. Oh, I think they got frozen and got bounced off. Okay, Miss Betty, would you go next?
Yes, thank you. So I've been, for years, I've made a few notes about what needs to be done. And it is, this is so comprehensive. It was like, oh my God, I've missed so much. I'm excited about my accountability buddy, Cynthia, and the fact that we'll be working together and creating, prioritizing the list and then checking off and holding each other accountable for making sure that things are done. That's really exciting. And after that's completed and we get together again as a group, I want to reach out to the community and start a group. I have an initiative that this can go under that I already planned to, have this information shared, but this is much larger than what my plans were. And I appreciate, Lee, your having this forum and this opportunity for us to learn more about it. So starting a group and then informing and educating the community members. And what I will be doing is all virtual. I am not going out in the community at all. But then after we educate some of our community members, they might decide to have in-person events, which is fine. So I appreciate this so much. This has been so inspiring and informative. And I too, again, appreciate the young folks that are here getting the information and how engaged they are and willing to make this happen, as soon as possible. So thank you, Lee. You're awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and let's talk about how to bring this to the Black community in a way that's, better translated.
Thank you. Will do.
Yeah. All right. Who else? Sally.
Well, Lee, thank you so much for going so deep into this and bringing it out for all of us. I was a hospice volunteer many, many years ago and have worked with grief on and off. So I feel really connected to this. I'm just, but I'm inspired right now to really have these conversations and go further and maybe and I've already talked with some friends who said, yes, we want to get together and talk about this more. So, and I'm really glad to have connected with my buddy Ellie. And we have not always worked on our checklist when we've talked. And I think maybe that's okay. It's just what we've needed. We will continue.
Awesome. Thank you. Nance.
Yeah, resounding thank you, Lee. I appreciate your heart, your spirit, the way that you are, for me at least, such a stabilizing influence while you communicate such a deep topic. And this, how it is an elephant under the rug, is the rug's been tossed out of the room, and the elephant, I'm very aware of deep emotional potholes in my life. I mean, there's been times where I just like to back off and weep for a while, and then come back in, and then be excited about starting a group. So I've got this emotional roller coaster going on, and I'm just thrilled about being buddies with Lyndon. So it's just a big thank you, and I hope to see you all again sometime.
Thank you. Y'all are doing great with the timing. Got it intuitively down. Ellie.
Gosh, there's a lot. I went through a lot with family members and having really incomplete relationships and deaths. And so was in the rituals with Sabomafu and really needed them. Yeah. And Soil, I so appreciate the work that you all do and everything you've done, bringing us all together and holding this space so beautifully. But I'm really focusing on right relations, and not just with documents, but with people. But it's all right relations for me, and to say things that need to be said, because you never know if you're going to have that opportunity again. And I think that we have something running in our minds about time being endless, and it's really important for us to remember it's finite, in this incarnation or whatever we believe. So yeah, I want to bring people together, and I want to do a book club, and I want to keep it alive. And a lot of this I want to do for my son, because I don't want him to go through what I've gone through. And yeah, and I'm really grateful for every single one of you and your sharing, and it's been beautiful. And the younger people, I'm just really grateful you're here. So thanks, everyone.
Yay, thank you, Ellie. Cynthia.
This is just such a fabulous service to the community, Lee, that you offered this and ran it so beautifully. And I'm feeling a fairly intense level of saturation and Zoom fatigue right now. But I'm also excited about, the resources and the process and the dates, for accountability with my partner, and looking forward to the day when it's complete and knowing how good that's going to feel.
Hear ya. Judy and Leslie.
I want to say, first off, our other computer froze, and so we missed a few checkouts, and I'm sorry about that, but the screen is frozen just with everyone looking just so beautiful and thoughtful on the other computer we had set up. So that's kind of a nice thing. I'm really appreciative, Lee, for you for creating this space, creating this workshop, and bringing us together. I've learned so much from you and from everybody and all the sharing that we've done together. This has been really helpful to me. Just the time, it's deeply emotional and also just so practical or concrete. Like, consider what you want your end of life to be like, and remember to, fill out this paperwork and store it somewhere fireproof. Oh yeah, so thank you.
I felt I already did my little checkout, so I'm just grateful everybody came together, and hope that all the encouragement I've received is, out of our need, we can make something of a gift. So I hope we'll do that with this. Thank you all.
Carmen.
Thank you so much, Lee. This workshop was like, even more than I could have imagined. I just appreciate you kind of demystifying death and shedding light on what it can be. People don't like to talk about it, and the way that you talk about it with such ease is very refreshing. And yeah, I feel like I'm going to be having a lot of deep thoughts and some conversations. Yeah, this is just kind of the start of my journey of contemplating end of life and afterlife. So yeah, I'm also very appreciative to everyone here for sharing what you know and what you've experienced and learned, because it's offered a lot of perspective for me. Yeah, so thank you.
Yeah, I part of a tradition in a sort of women's circle style tradition where we honor the elders and the youngers, right? And so I'm just noticing that theme here also, just like people really appreciating Kenzie and Carmen, and just like having your beautiful youthfulness in our midst, and your presence and engagement, and really like you're the future. And then honoring our elders, the elders here who have lived more life than us, and may or may not be the ones who are moving into the next chapter first, but certainly that we can just so much respect and appreciate your wisdom and the journey you've taken. So we honor the elders and the youngers and everybody in between. This is sweet to be together. I will send out a link with an evaluation. And if you have any thoughts about what you'd like to see differently or things you didn't like, I'm so welcome to, I see you. I'm so welcome and invite that feedback. And that might be an easier place to do it on a, sort of a back end Google form. And also if you have testimonials, it's always helpful for people to read them and to see that people get a lot out of this class. I will really contemplate the sort of check-in, for everybody who's taken the class. I like that idea. And if anybody is willing to administer, be an admin for a Facebook group where like everyone who's done the class can come together, I am so open to creating that. I just don't know that I want to commit to being the only admin. So let me know if you're willing to do that, and maybe we can create something. All right, we are coming to our end. A Telegram group. Yeah, Telegram's interesting. I mean, do you not consider Telegram social media? It's like a messaging platform, so it's like a little different. Okay, that's an interesting idea. I mean, the thing is, it's going to take a while for people to get over to Telegram. I mean, I'm on Telegram, but yeah, it's an interesting idea. Nance, did you have thought?
Again, where are the PowerPoints from each session available?
I'm going to make one PDF of the whole thing, and I'm going to send that and the recordings from today and the evaluation link. And I don't know, probably be Sunday before I get to that. It takes a minute for the whole thing to process,
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Last thoughts, last comments, questions, sharings. Take a breath with me.
Could I just ask if people would be okay if you shared everybody's email with the other people in the group?
Yeah, I am willing to do that. If you don't want your email shared, tell me now or tell me later in an email. Otherwise, I will default just to sharing unless you get in touch with me that you don't want that. Does that work for folks? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's very bonding to talk about, you can feel the oxytocin even being released as we talk about this topic, right? That's how our sort of chemical system works, which is a little inkling as to what it could be like when it's actually happening in a conscious way, right? We get a little taste of that just by talking about it. Love to you all. Blessings to you all. I hope to see you if we do a little reunion, and happy holidays, however you celebrate.
Happy holidays. Thanks, Lee.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Take
Wonderful to meet
care.
Everyone,
you.
be well.
Bye, thank you.